An unmarked white envelope addressed to me. That's where it all began. I'm Sarah, nearing 60. 15 years ago, I divorced my husband after discovering his affair. And since then, I've been living on my own. For the past year, I've been staying with my second son and his girlfriend, Daisy. My eldest son, Tham, now 35, lives in an apartment near his workplace. Life was quiet and routine with me working part-time, until the day this mysterious envelope arrived. It was crudely marked with my name and address with no indication of a sender. Inside was a hotel bill. What's this? I wondered aloud. Upon closer inspection, I realized the bill wasn't addressed to me but to my eldest son, Tham. A detailed wedding and reception expenses dated about 2 weeks ago. What could this mean? Did Tham get married? Tham had a girlfriend I met once a few months back, but there was no mention of marriage at the time. I didn't have the best impression of her. Her name was Michelle, if I recall correctly. She barely made eye contact and seemed constantly uncomfortable, punctuating her speech with and oh as if something was bothering her. Could it be that Tham actually married her? I quickly called Tham, but he didn't answer, likely because he was at work. I decided to leave a message on the landline at the apartment where Tham lived, and to my surprise, a woman picked up. It was Michelle. When she realized it was me, she spoke with irritation. This is why I told Tham we should get rid of this landline. What does this mean? Did you two get married? Are you living together? I fired off a series of questions. Michelle responded in a flat, indifferent tone. Yeah, we got married. We're living together now. So what? So what? I received a bill from the hotel. I didn't hear anything about a wedding. Oh, that arrived already? I sent it because I thought you'd pay, Michelle replied casually. We picked a venue where we could pay later. We covered the deposit, but we figured you should take care of the rest. What? They had a wedding without even inviting me, and now they expect me to pay? I was completely at a loss for words. Michelle, sounding irritated but firm, said, Tham was the one who insisted on marrying me. I found the whole mother-in-law thing too bothersome and declined many times. So naturally, you should be the one to pay. If you refuse, you realize Tham will end up buried in debt? Her cold tone snapped me back to reality. What does Tham think about all this? He says it's fine, of course. Oh, and don't bother trying to contact him. I made sure your number is blocked. So that's why I couldn't reach him earlier. Yes, and while we're at it, other than for weddings, funerals, and the like, please don't contact us at all. And even for those, we don't want anything that costs money. Wait, just hold on a minute. Why are you avoiding me so much? It's obvious, isn't it? A mother-in-law is nothing but a nuisance. Besides, you're broke after your divorce, right? We can't have you begging us for money. I felt a surge of anger as I retorted, if you think I'm so poor, why are you sending me this bill? That's a separate issue. Please make sure to pay it. With that, Michelle hung up abruptly. I stood there holding the receiver, completely stunned. Mom, my second son, Jack's voice brought me back to reality. It felt like hours had passed since that phone call, and I was standing alone in a dark room. Tears overflowed as I explained everything to Jack. He hadn't heard anything about Tom's marriage and was now fuming with anger. It's unbelievable. That wife of his, she seems like trouble, doesn't she? I thought she might be a good match for my brother, but now. That's right, Tham, who was spoiled by my late mother-in-law, has looked down on me since he was a child. By middle school, he was calling me old hag and worthless. He, along with my mother-in-law and ex-husband, treated me terribly. Jack was the one who always stood up for me. After my divorce, I lived alone for a long time. But my kind son, worried I might be lonely, invited me to move in with him and his girlfriend, Daisy. What should I do about this bill? It's over $20,000. I could use the alimony for my ex-husband to pay it, but I honestly don't want to touch that money. I was planning to save it for your and Daisy's wedding, or for when you have kids. Both you and Daisy have always been so kind to me, so I decided to use all the alimony and property settlement money, which my stingy ex-husband scrimped and saved, for the two of you. Then my son said, Mom, that money is yours. You don't have to use it for us, and it's completely unreasonable to use it for my brother. He took the bill from me. I'll get rid of this at work. Remember what my brother has done to you. You absolutely must not pay this. Even though my eldest son had treated me poorly, I still felt a sense of responsibility as his mother. If I kept the bill, I might end up paying it. Jack understood that, and I felt relieved. 2 weeks later, Michelle called me. Hey, Why haven't you paid yet? The venue contacted me because the payment deadline has passed. I've discussed it with my second son, and we decided there's no need to pay. Besides, can't you cover it with the cash gifts from the wedding? I managed to voice my stance, though my heart raced with anxiety. Michelle's response was immediate and furious. We've moved, and we've already spent all the cash gifts. What are you going to do about this? What? You moved? Where to? None of your business. Just shut up. It was clear that Michelle wanted nothing to do with me. Realizing this, I steeled myself and proposed, all right, I'll offer you $10,000. In return, we part ways completely, no contact, not even for weddings or funerals. We act as if the other person does not exist. What do you think? But Michelle wasn't satisfied. $10,000 isn't enough. I need at least $20,000. What are you thinking? You didn't invite me to the wedding, you didn't tell me where you moved, and now you're asking for $20,000? I don't care. You probably have about 20 years left to live anyway. We plan to live twice as long as you, so I might as well take all your money while I can. That's just cruel, I said, struggling to keep my composure. Well, one way or another, we're going to get that $20,000 from you. Once you pay, we'll cut ties as you requested. I was eager to distance myself from Michelle, so I reluctantly agreed to her terms. Jack would probably be furious if he found out, but I wanted to avoid any more trouble from Tham and his wife. A year later, Jack married Daisy. As they were preparing to set up their new home, they asked me to move in with them, even though I had planned to live alone. In addition to giving them a wedding gift, I prepaid 2 years' rent for their new place and contributed to their mortgage. Then Michelle called again. I heard Tom's brother and his wife are building a house. You helped them, didn't you? Because of you, Tom is working 2 jobs and is exhausted. And you only gave us $20,000, Michelle said. It was clear she had heard about our new living arrangements somehow. I was taken aback. But you agreed to the terms back then. There's nothing I can do about it now. Shut up. We're having a baby. What are you going to do about that? Oh, really? Congratulations. But remember, we agreed to cut all ties, so I'm not giving you a penny. Despite her attempts to pressure me, I remained firm. You think you can use a grandchild as a bargaining chip. Even if your baby is born, you won't be seeing them. You'll regret it. With that, Michelle hung up. It seemed she believed a grandchild could control a mother-in-law. While I'd love to have a grandchild, I'm already expecting one. Actually twins, a boy and a girl. Daisy is 8 months pregnant. Tom's child doesn't interest me at all. 6 months later, Daisy gave birth to the twins, and I was joyfully and busily caring for them. Then I received an email from Tom with a photo attached. It showed a beautiful baby with Michelle and Tom. Since we had already cut ties, it was none of my business. When I continued to ignore it, Michelle called me, her frustration evident in her voice. Did you see the picture? Isn't it incredibly cute? Yes, it is. So, what do you want? Don't speak like that. I went out of my way to show you your grandchild, your eldest grandson. You could at least send a congratulatory gift. What? I thought we agreed to no contact except for weddings, funerals, and such. Yes, that was the agreement, but normally a grandparent would send a congratulatory gift or something. I wasn't surprised by her approach. No, I'm sticking to the agreement, Michelle. Realizing it was pointless to argue further, Michelle handed the phone to Tom. That's your deal with Michelle, not mine. Send me the celebratory money. Tom, ever skilled at twisting logic, said, It's your eldest grandson, you know. Don't you think you should be looking out for him? According to Tom, how they treat their grandchild will somehow influence how I'm treated in my old age. I really don't need you to worry about my old age, I replied. Huh? You think you can rely on Jack? With 2 kids of his own, do you really believe he can take care of you when you're older? I'm not planning to rely on Jack and his family. So what's your plan? I know you didn't get much from Dad's alimony. Wouldn't it be better to stay on good terms with us now? Tom said triumphantly. To that, I answered, As I've said, I'll be fine. I've been contributing to a personal pension plan since I was single. It's an old policy with good rates, and I'll be receiving about $800 a month starting this year. Additionally, my work history qualifies me for a government pension of around $800 as well. I can manage comfortably on both. Tom seemed stunned by my response. After a moment of stunned silence, he stammered, But that's only enough if nothing goes wrong. When you get older and your health declines, you'll end up coming to us for help. Chuckling, I replied, "Don't worry, I canceled the life insurance policy where you were the beneficiary. I had originally taken out life insurance policies for both Tom and Jack when they were born, with them each as beneficiaries. I canceled Tom's to cover the $20,000 bill. There's plenty of money from the cancellation, so you needn't worry." Canceled. Are you serious? Yes, indeed. It's a shame, really. If I hadn't canceled it, you would have received about $100,000 when I pass away. No way. If you're looking to blame someone, point the finger at Michelle. She was the one who insisted on getting the $20,000 from me by any means necessary. The cancellation refund was only about $50,000, so I had around $30,000 left. Less than what might shock Tom, but I wasn't obligated to disclose the exact amount. Satisfied with Tom's stunned silence, I hung up the phone. Shortly after, it appeared Tom and Michelle had a massive argument. There's talk of divorce, but discussions about alimony and child support are stalled, leaving them living separately within the same house. It's like watching the downfall of someone obsessed with money. Meanwhile, I've taken up part-time work as a cleaner to ensure I'm not a financial burden on Jack and his family during my retirement. Warmly welcomed by my son and his wife, and with the joy of 2 grandchildren, I'm truly content now.
My sister, who took John away from me, said, "I'll be happy enough for both of us." She sent me an invitation to her wedding with John, trying to make me jealous. But I told Mom, "We'll go anyway. We'll make sure to make it special." Usually my parents are nice and hardly ever get mad, but they'd had enough of my sister's bad behavior. We went to the wedding with determined smiles, but it turned out to be a disaster, not a happy occasion. I'm Hannah Turner, 24 years old, and I draw pictures for a living. I got married recently, not even a year ago, and my relationship with my husband, John, is strong. We met through a friend and quickly started dating. He proposed to me at a restaurant with a beautiful view at night. Our wedding was full of happiness, surrounded by family and friends. One day, I noticed that my husband John forgot his phone in the living room. I picked it up and brought it to him, saying, "John, you forgot your phone." He seemed a bit nervous as he took it, thanking me quickly before rushing out the door. His sudden rush left me feeling uneasy, and that feeling marked the beginning of my suspicions. After that day, John started carrying his phone with him everywhere, even at home. I found it strange, but I couldn't imagine John would cheat on me, right? We'd been getting along fine without any major problems, so I tried to convince myself that everything was okay. However, my trust didn't last long. While I was hanging up laundry, I saw a notification on my own phone. It was an email from an unfamiliar address. "Hey, long time no see. How have you been?" It seemed like it could be from someone I knew, but I heard about scams where people pretend to be friends, so I decided to ignore it. But then another message came through. "Hey, don't ignore me. I can see you read it. Ignoring your sister? That's just like you, always so mean." Right after I closed my phone, it rang, and it was another message from the same unknown sender, calling me their sister. Indeed, I do have a sister named Sally, but she's known for causing trouble in various ways. Sally, my sister, had a history of causing trouble, especially with money. She often borrowed money from friends and then disappeared without paying them back, leaving my parents and me to deal with the fallout. Because she was their daughter, my parents always ended up paying off her debts. On top of that, Sally had a habit of making complaints over the smallest things. She'd yell and be rude, even making people kneel down to apologize to her. This made her a difficult customer to deal with. Another problem was Sally's love life. She had a thing for men who were already in relationships, whether they were friends or family. She didn't care about causing tension between people, she just pursued what she wanted. Because of her behavior, I had cut ties with Sally since she left home, so when I received a message with the word sister on my phone, I felt uneasy. I debated whether to respond, but I ultimately decided to ignore it. Whether it was really Sally or someone pretending to be her, I didn't want to get involved. However, the messages kept coming until I finally opened one to block the sender. What I saw shocked me to my core. It was a message from Sally, saying that John was now hers and that I should hurry up and divorce him. There was even a photo of John and Sally together as proof. I didn't need any more confirmation, I knew it was true. I sat down, feeling dizzy with shock and disbelief. After Sally's message, John never came back home. Instead, All I got was a set of divorce papers filled out by him. My attempts to reach John were met with silence. Losing my husband in such a sudden way left me feeling devastated, angry, and emotionally fragile. Why, John? I cried for days. Once I had calmed down a bit, I decided to reach out to Sally. What do you want? Let me speak to John. You've been ignoring me for so long, and now you contact me without even saying hello or apologizing. What's your intention? I demanded. Excuse me? You should be the one apologizing. Just send John back home for now. No way. He doesn't want to come back. He says he loves me more than he ever loved you. And why should I apologize? It's your fault for not being able to keep him. No matter what I said, Sally wouldn't listen. I was already feeling terrible mentally, too exhausted to worry or think anymore. I realized it was pointless to keep arguing. Holding on would only make things worse. You know, if you're going to be angry at someone, be angry at your own lack of charm, loser. After that conversation, I shut off my phone. I was done dealing with Sally and had lost all affection for John, who had chosen her. Before I knew it, I had signed the divorce papers, and just like that, my once happy marriage was over. My life became a mess after that. Maybe because of the emotional damage, I struggled to eat and felt more tired than usual. I looked so worn out that my coworkers started to worry. Despite trying to reassure them with a smile, it felt like my body and mind were reaching their limits. Eventually, I collapsed at work and woke up in the emergency room. My parents and a close coworker were there beside me. Hannah. Can you recognize me, Hannah? Their voices brought me back to reality. Looking around, I realized I was in hospital, remembering what had happened. Oh, I collapsed, didn't I? My dad sighed with relief. We were so worried when the hospital called. Are you working too hard? He asked. But deep down, I knew it was the stress from John and Sally. Maybe, I muttered, and my mom quickly called for a nurse to get a doctor. After a checkup, they decided to keep me in the hospital for observation. Are you eating properly? Getting enough rest? My dad bombarded me with questions, clearly worried. I assured him I was okay. My mom asked him to buy some drinks and snacks for me, and he agreed, leaving the room. Hey Hannah, something's not right, is it? Natalie said. You've seemed really tired lately, and this is so unlike you. They say women have strong intuition, and Natalie seemed to have it. I sighed and opened up to them about everything that had been happening. I ended up crying while explaining, realizing I had reached my breaking point without even realizing it. I thought I could handle it all, but it turns out I didn't understand myself as well as I thought. As I tried to laugh it off, my mom squeezed my hand tightly. I had no idea all of this was going on. Why didn't you tell us sooner? This is the first time I'm hearing about the divorce. I'm sorry to say this in front of you, Mom, but is Sally out of her mind? I can't believe it. Both of them expressed their anger towards Sally, and I could tell they were genuinely worried about me. I didn't want to cause trouble or worry anyone, so I tried to downplay the situation. I felt embarrassed, and part of me believed what Sally had said might be true. Maybe it was my fault for not being more appealing. That's nonsense. What are you talking about? It's clear that Sally and your ex are the ones in the wrong here. Natalie is right. You didn't do anything wrong. To think you were suffering all alone, I'm so sorry. Both of them looked like they were on the verge of tears. I regretted not relying on the people around me more. My mom suggested that I come back home for a while considering my mental and physical state, and after the doctor also recommended rest, Natalie took care of the paperwork at work with my medical certificate. When my dad returned with drinks and heard about me resting at home, he immediately agreed that it was a good idea. Natalie managed to explain everything to my workplace, and HR assured me, "You've got plenty of paid time off saved up, so take your time off to rest." After thanking Natalie, she reassured me that she'd be there for me, and I should lean on her whenever I needed. Over the next few days, I stayed at my parents' house. Natalie came to visit occasionally, and I could feel my mind and body gradually recovering. I realized that keeping everything bottled up inside wasn't healthy. Today, as Natalie and I were enjoying cake prepared by my mom, my phone rang, piquing my curiosity. I opened it, and my heart raced. "Hey there, how are you doing? Thought you might be wondering about us, so I decided to reach out." It was Sally, who I hadn't spoken to since the fallout. I regretted letting my guard down and checking my phone. Natalie noticed the change in my expression. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, but it was clear something was off. Natalie asked if she could see my phone. I didn't want to worry her, but I had just realized that bottling things up wasn't good. So, I nodded and handed her my phone. Natalie looked puzzled as she read the message. "What's this? Is she picking a fight? This is Sally, right?" I nodded in response and Natalie closed the phone. "Just ignore it. Actually, let's block her." "No point in dealing with someone like this," she suggested, and I agreed. Opening my phone to block Sally just then, another message from Sally came in. "We've been living together smoothly since then, and guess what? I got pregnant." You might be thinking already, but nope. John and I started our relationship 6 months ago. The word pregnant made time stop for me. We had been trying to conceive during our marriage. It would be great if we could be blessed with our baby soon, we used to say. Reading this message hurt deeply. Tears started flowing and Natalie, seeing me cry, took the phone from my hand. After reading the message, she yelled, "What? I can't believe this. I'm so mad I could explode. We should sue them." Suing was something I had considered when I first received the message, but now, I didn't have the energy or will to pursue it. "I just don't want to deal with this anymore," I muttered, and Natalie calmed down. "Sorry, I got too emotional." "You're right. It's best not to get involved." Natalie's comforting back rub felt so kind, and I cried a bit more. Then my mom came into the living room, having seen what happened. "Hey Hannah, actually, I haven't told your dad about this yet." I understood what that meant. Knowing this would infuriate my dad. "But I think it's time we told him." My mom's solemn words struck me deeply. I took a moment to think. "I also believe it's time to talk about it. This is just too much," I concluded. Natalie's words convinced me too. So I decided to let my mom talk to him. My mom said she would talk about it, so I decided to leave it to her. After Natalie went home and it got dark, my dad came back from work. He said it smelled good in the house and asked what was for dinner. I welcomed him home, and he seemed happier since I returned. Mom said Dad's mood had improved, and she was glad I was back. Her words made me really happy, knowing I had a place where I felt calm. But today, Mom looked serious when she talked to Dad. She said they needed to discuss something important, and Dad understood, becoming serious too. Then Dad mentioned it was about me, and I could see kindness in his eyes, which almost made me cry. After explaining everything to Dad, he seemed calm but a bit angry. He told me not to block Sally yet, even though I didn't have to read her messages. He must have had his reasons. Mom usually followed Dad's advice in situations like this. Dad also suggested letting Natalie know about it. I understood and agreed. Both Mom and Dad reassured me that everything would be okay and that they were here for me, along with Natalie. Their kind words and smiles made me feel so relieved and happy that I ended up crying. Seeing this, both my parents laughed, and my heart felt warm. That night, I told Natalie everything, and she said, "It's wonderful you have such supportive parents, and remember, you've got me too." I gazed at the stars, feeling comforted. After talking it over more, I decided to move back home. That meant going back to my parents' place since it's close enough to commute to work from there. Natalie thought it would be better for my mental well-being to be away from a house full of painful memories. Since I was the one on the rental contract, I handled canceling it and sent John's stuff to his parents' house. On moving day, I sorted out mail forwarding at the post office and completed the move smoothly. I bid farewell to the landlord with a smile, leaving on good terms. Back at my parents' place, I settled back in and returned to work. My coworkers had been concerned, but now I could genuinely tell them I was okay with a smile. My boss reminded me not to push myself too hard, which made me appreciate my workplace even more. A few months later, I returned home. When I got there, my mom had a serious look on her face. She said we needed to talk and asked me to come to the living room after changing. I sensed something was wrong from her expression. After changing, I went to the living room where my parents sat, looking puzzled over a letter. I sat down in front of them, and they showed me the letter. It was an invitation to a wedding, but what could be the problem with it? I asked if I could see it, and my dad said yes. When I looked at it, I saw it was from Sally and John. I was shocked. "What?" I couldn't believe it. "You filed a forwarding address because you moved, right?" my dad asked. "Yes, that's right." No wonder both my parents looked worried, but surprisingly, I felt calm. If this had happened before, I would have been really shocked, but now, I just felt disgusted. Are you okay? My mom asked, concerned. Dad was also watching me. Somehow, I'm better than I expected. I just feel disgusted. I wonder how far they want to go to insult me, right? Even if she's my daughter. This is too much for me to handle, I said. I'm glad Hannah isn't as shocked as we thought, but this is still unacceptable. I could see my parents were angry for my sake. I'm grateful for my parents who are standing up for me. The invitation was addressed to me. Do I have to go? I asked, feeling uncertain, and my parents looked at me with determination. Mom and I will go. We'll show them what hell looks like. It was unsettling to see my usually gentle parents so angry. But the invitation is addressed to me, I pointed out. Well, we're the parents of the bride. It would be rude not to attend, right? My dad reasoned. Exactly. It's our daughter's wedding. We're looking forward to it, Mom said with a smile, but her eyes didn't match her expression, making me nervous. Dad brushed off my concerns and kept getting ready. I hope it's okay, he said, ignoring me. I heard a car pulling up, so I went to check if they had called a taxi. But instead, I found Natalie stepping out of a familiar car. Natalie, what are you doing here? I asked in surprise as I opened the door. She looked stunning in her party dress. Good morning. Are your dad and mom ready? She asked, ignoring my question. Wait, am I attending the wedding too? I was shocked by her statement. When my parents came out, I asked them what was going on. It turned out that one of John's relatives was a friend of Natalie's. Upon hearing about the situation, she was invited to attend as his relative's girlfriend. My parents didn't object. In fact, they seemed excited about going together. As I pondered what they were up to, Natalie said, I can't just sit back after what happened to Hannah. You get it, right? Despite feeling anxious, I agreed. Then my parents and Natalie left together for the venue in one car. I thought about joining them, but Natalie seemed to sense my hesitation and said, if you want to see, I can show you through a video call. So I stayed home and trusted them. But my curiosity got the best of me, and I reached out to Natalie for a video call. When they arrived at the venue, my parents and Natalie headed to the reception. Natalie was on the guest list, thanks to John's relatives' arrangement, but my parents weren't listed since they weren't officially invited. The receptionist went to check their names, and that's when Sally showed up. Sally was surprised to see my parents and couldn't hide her confusion. Why are you here? She asked. Well, we're the parents. It's only natural for us to come, my parents replied. There seems to be a mistake. We didn't receive an invitation, they explained, which made Sally force a smile. The invitation was actually meant for Hannah. Yes, we were surprised when Hannah told us about it. We had no idea about the wedding. Since Hannah couldn't make it today due to work, we came instead. It's fine to invite Hannah, but you should have sent one to us too. It wouldn't look good without the bride's parents, right? My dad pointed out, mentioning the lack of invitation twice. Though I couldn't see my parents' expressions through Natalie's video call, I could picture the scene in my mind. Yes, I'm your daughter after all. Of course, you'd be happy. Sally seemed to genuinely believe my parents came for her sake. I thought she was delusional, I muttered to myself. Then John appeared. He turned pale at the sight of my parents. Relax, John. They came to celebrate with us. They must really love me, especially since Hannah is like that. Sally reassured John, who seemed relieved and greeted my parents with a smile. John's parents also joined in, and the atmosphere became friendly and warm. Seeing my former in-laws chatting happily, a memory of being fondly cared for by them stings a bit. I wondered if they were only nice to me because I was their son's wife, which was a bit shocking. Maybe it was indeed the right decision not to go, I murmured. Then the scene shifted to the ceremony and then to the reception. At the reception, Sally and John made a happy entrance. Natalie occasionally asked me if I was okay, but surprisingly I was fine, responding, I'm okay. More than anything, I was worried about my phone's battery, but she reassured me she had a portable charger, well prepared indeed. When it was time to read the letter of gratitude to the parents, Sally started panicking because she hadn't expected her parents to come. Seeing this, my parents asked the MC for the microphone. Today, we weren't actually supposed to come, so it's understandable that Sally wasn't prepared. As a surprise from us to you, we'd like to convey a message to our daughter Sally, my dad announced. The venue erupted in applause. Sally seemed relieved by the save and smirked, clapping exaggeratedly. Dad, I'm so happy. Her exaggerated gratitude was annoying. I kept watching, feeling uneasy. Then my dad did something unbelievable with a smile. "Our surprise from us to you is this," he announced, and suddenly the doors of the reception hall opened, revealing several men standing there, all looking outraged. I watched the scene unfold, wondering what would happen next. Sally turned pale at the sight of them. Our Sally is so charming that she has received affection from many men. The kind Sally has responded to all these feelings, making her a pride and joy. And today, these gentlemen wanted to give us a prize, so we brought them here, my dad initiated, leading to the men storming the stage, expressing their anger. Sally tried to escape but was confronted with accusations like, "What do you mean you're marrying someone else? How much do you think I've spent on you? Pay back the money you borrowed." Sally turned pale and was nearly in tears watching this. Natalie coolly commented, "Wow." While I was stunned. John, confronting Sally with the "what's going on?" found her too shocked and flustered to respond. Then my mom grabbed the microphone and started talking. "Guess what? We have another surprise. As my husband mentioned earlier, our daughter Sally is really popular, even with other women." When Mom said this, a bunch of women in the crowd stood up. We invited those who wanted to meet Sally. After Mom spoke, the women went over to Sally. Suddenly, someone else grabbed the microphone and shouted, "You stole my man, and now you're trying to act all happy. Give me money for cheating with my husband. You disappeared as soon as I lent you money. Pay me back." Everything got chaotic. The reception room went from noisy to really chaotic. I bet the other guests were shocked, but they seemed more disgusted than surprised. It was scary to see my parents smiling through all this madness, and I realized this was the kind of reputation my sister had. Amidst all the chaos, someone else grabbed the microphone. "Sally, it's really nice to see such a lovely person becoming our son's wife." Surprisingly, it was my ex-mother-in-law who spoke up unexpectedly. I was puzzled, wondering what she meant. She went on, "It might not be as grand as the surprise Sally's parents prepared, but we also have something special for you." John seemed shocked by his mother's words. "What do you mean, Mom? Can't you see what's happening?" But his attempt to calm things down was ignored by my ex-father-in-law, who took hold of the microphone. "First, we want to thank Sally's parents for their thoughtful surprise. I happen to own a business, and we decided to remove John from his expected position as my successor. That's our surprise for you." "What? What's going on?" Sally and John were shocked. I remembered hearing about John being prepared to take over his dad's business during their marriage, so his dad's announcement was surprising. "What are you saying, Dad? You've made your own choices, cheated by your own will, divorced by your own will, and remarried by your own will. Someone who can make such commendable decisions should start your own business rather than take over mine. Don't decide on your own. You said I was the successor." John looked panicked. "We're serious. You're already doing great on your own. Use your judgment to live your life from now on." "With Sally by your side," his dad replied. "Exactly, I couldn't be prouder of having a son who can make such independent decisions." I was stunned. My ex-in-laws seemed to be laughing along with my parents, but their eyes didn't match their smiles. They seemed pretty angry. Natalie found the situation amusing. "They deserve it. I can barely keep from laughing. I'm just speechless," I said, and Natalie caught me up on what had happened while I was away. My ex-in-laws came to apologize. They truly considered me and my parents as part of their family. They had teamed up with my parents to plan this surprise retaliation. Natalie had been keeping in touch with my parents and had also heard the story from John's relatives, so she knew everything. Hearing this brought tears to my eyes, realizing I had so many people supporting me. "You're not alone, Hannah. There are so many people who care about you," Natalie said, trying to hold back her own tears. "How could we stay silent when someone we care about is hurting?" Yeah, I cried, unable to speak properly, just nodding. "Thank you," I managed to say finally. I saw my parents and ex-in-laws smiling kindly at me through the screen. Meanwhile, chaos continued at the venue, with the staff trying to calm down the disastrous situation. Then, a man stood up and made his way toward the stage. He stood in front of John, who then collapsed to his knees. After saying something to John, the man returned to his seat. "Hey, what did that man say?" I couldn't quite make it out from this far away unless he used a microphone. "Maybe I should go ask him directly," Natalie suggested and headed toward the man with her phone. "Excuse me," she said as she approached, and the man turned around. I was surprised. Uncle? It was indeed my dad's brother, my uncle. Natalie showed him the screen, and upon seeing me, my uncle looked surprised and very happy. Hannah, are you okay? I heard about what happened today from your dad. It must have been tough. Thanks for worrying about me, but I'm fine. By the way, what did you say to John just now? I told him that since I run this hotel, I'll be seeking compensation for the damages. The reception hall is a mess because of the bride and groom, my uncle explained. Both Natalie and I understood upon hearing his words. That's why John looked so pale. After chatting with my uncle for a while, I felt a bit more hopeful. Trying to spot Sally through the camera was tough because of the crowd surrounding her. This wedding had turned into anything but a celebration. Looking around, I noticed many guests leaving, including some of John's colleagues I recognized, who seemed puzzled as they left. I thought to myself, well, that makes sense, feeling somewhat relieved. The wedding ended in disaster, with Sally and John looking worn out and pale by the end. And now, the bride and groom will leave, the MC announced. But by then, most of the guests had already departed, and only our parents, former in-laws, Natalie, and a few of John's relatives were left to applaud. When my parents came back home, I went up to greet them, and to my surprise, Natalie and John's parents were with them. I was a bit shocked but bowed to my former in-laws. I'm sorry for not keeping in touch. I regret how our marriage ended despite your kindness. I apologized, feeling guilty for not reaching out to them after the divorce. My former in-laws, with tears in their eyes, placed their hands on my shoulders. We should be the ones apologizing, they said. But I insisted it wasn't necessary and thanked them for their care during the marriage. After that, we all sat down for tea and had a pleasant chat, expressing gratitude for the wedding events and parting on good terms. I felt like I finally had closure and felt rejuvenated. A few days later, I received a message from Sally on my phone during work. I had forgotten to block her, but when I checked, it was a barrage of complaints. You ruined our wedding. Take responsibility. Did you tell our parents? Are you jealous? Stop blaming me for your unhappiness, loser. Sally's message flashed on my phone. I sighed and turned to Natalie at the next desk. Can I still claim alimony for the affair? She's practically giving me all the evidence herself, right? Fed up with it all, I decided to hire a lawyer to claim alimony. I saved all the messages and images Sally sent and replied to her. Thanks for providing evidence of the affair. A lawyer will be contacting you, so please stop contacting me directly. Sally freaked out. A lawyer? What are you doing? Stop it. She began deleting the messages and images she'd sent. When I told her that I had saved all the evidence, she panicked even more and started apologizing. Sorry, it was all lies. I'll leave Jan alone now that he's not going to be the CEO, and I won't say anything mean anymore. Please don't make me pay alimony, I already have debts. That's not my problem. I don't want Jan, and do whatever you want. Actually, maybe it's good you took him. I don't need a man who cheats. And in the end, you protected me. Thanks, sis, I replied before cutting off contact. After blocking Sally, she tried reaching out from different accounts, but I blocked those too. I quickly consulted with the lawyer I was referred to, and they acted swiftly upon receiving the evidence. Soon after, I started getting messages from John. It seemed things weren't going well with Sally. He sent me creepy messages like a lovesick Romeo, which I ignored and blocked. When he tried to contact me through the house, my parents handled it. Apparently, he got scared off by them and hasn't reached out since. Later, the lawyer informed me that John and Sally had agreed to pay the alimony. They tried to resist using Sally's usual complaint tactics, but that didn't work on a lawyer. Realizing they had no chance, they gave in. John, who was initially resistant, looked defeated and pale after learning Sally had provided plenty of evidence against him. Despite feeling bitter about being harassed by such immature individuals, I'm now just thankful for the many people who stood by me. Sally and John eventually got divorced. Sally, with no one else to turn to, contacted our house once, but my parents issued a statement of estrangement. She hung up the phone crying. John, rumored about the wedding at work, found it uncomfortable and ended up resigning. Unable to go back home, he's now getting by with part-time jobs. Meanwhile, I received a promotion at work because of my excellent performance. I also started a relationship with someone I met in my new department. Thinking ahead, Natalie also clicked with one of John's relatives, and we often share our love stories. Next month, As a celebration, my parents, Natalie, and even my former in-laws are planning a trip to the hot springs together. Despite hitting rock bottom, I feel happier than ever before.
Mom, hey mom, wake up. I was suddenly shaken awake, my eyes barely opened to see my daughter's anxious face looming in my blurry vision. Slowly, I sat up and asked her, "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" "No, Mom, please. We need to run away from Dad now, hurry." With that single word, my groggy mind snapped to alertness. What followed was a shocking revelation from my daughter that left me dumbfounded. My name is Sarah. I'm a 35-year-old ordinary woman who works while raising my 7-year-old daughter, Emily. Our precious gem is not only adorable, but a bit unusual, or rather, has some mysterious aspects. Mom, you're forgetting your umbrella. Despite the weather forecast for the day being partly sunny with clouds, I was stopped by my daughter as I was about to leave the house. "It's fine. There's only a 10% chance of rain today." "But Mom, you're going to get soaked." I saw it in a dream. "Please take an umbrella with you." Reluctantly, I took the umbrella she handed me and headed to work. Lo and behold, I encountered a sudden downpour just before I was about to return home. I was surprised and came home drenched, only to be proudly greeted by my daughter, whose umbrella was also wet on the stand. "Welcome home, Mom. See, it happened just like I said. Emily has had this slight mysterious power since she was very young, accurately predicting the weather and dinner menus. It might be an exaggeration to call it a precognitive ability, but it's unusual. She sometimes feels out of place because of this, especially when playing with friends, but she doesn't seem to mind. Above all, we, her family, have accepted this as part of her uniqueness, and she's otherwise a perfectly normal, adorable girl. What concerns me more is my husband, Mike, who is the same age as me. We met through a marriage agency. Back then, I was a hard-working career woman, successful but inexperienced with relationships. Urged by my impatient parents, I registered with the agency. It might be odd for a wife to say, but Mike was even more handsome back then and instantly charmed me. Moreover, he was a feminist, and I instantly fell in love. Our relationship quickly progressed with marriage in mind. My husband and I have been married for 10 years this year. He always comes home late these days. Emily is only 7 years old, and she still requires a lot of care. Juggling her care, household chores, and work without Mike's help has been overwhelming. Everything costs money these days, and we need to save as much as we can for Emily's sake. You never know what might happen, so I'm working hard. That's what he said when I asked him about it. I can't argue with him when he says it's for Emily's sake. I've been overwhelmed with work, household chores, and solo parenting. Then one day, Mike came home early, looking extremely tense. Sensing the mood, I sent Emily away before asking, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" "I want to quit my job," he said. It was completely unexpected. After putting Emily to bed, we talked, and it turned out he'd been struggling with workplace relationships and no longer found his job fulfilling, making it a pain to go to work. Don't blame me, I just can't take it anymore. Once things settle down, I'll find another job right away. Until then, I'll take care of everything at home, he explained. I didn't want him to quit, but forcing him could lead to worse outcomes. Reluctantly, I agreed to his request. Before long, I got serious about my job, and my husband became a stay-at-home dad. His way of doing household chores and cooking was, to put it mildly, a bit sloppy compared to when I did them. What particularly bothered me was the meals. I came home around 9 o'clock at night when my daughter went to bed and ate my husband's homemade food. But there was a lot of fried food, and the seasoning was surprisingly strong, so I always needed water. The first time I ate it, I couldn't help but confront him. "What is this? You didn't feed the same thing to our daughter, did you?" No, I made sure to prepare something with lighter flavors for the kid, and I kept the portions appropriate. I thought you'd appreciate something with a bit more flavor after a long day. Too much fried food, not enough vegetables, and the soup barely tastes like anything. I'd be fine with lighter seasoning for kids, and I wish you'd paid more attention to balancing the meals, I complained. Despite my repeated comments, The seasoning and menu hardly changed. If I tried to leave anything uneaten, he'd say, "I'll save it for our daughter to eat tomorrow." That's a joke. I'd rather eat it myself than let our daughter have it. Reluctantly, I finished my meal, and as an apology, he started offering dessert after dinner. He also began preparing a nightly drink and snack, calling it a nightcap, thinking it would please me. I hadn't been much of a drinker or late-night snacker before, but I couldn't outright reject his kindness. I appreciated his efforts in cooking and his attempts at being a good house husband, so I generally turned a blind eye, enjoying the break from household chores. About 6 months into my role as the primary breadwinner, I finally had a day off with absolutely no plans. However, I felt off from the morning and lay down feeling foggy. Lately, I've been feeling lethargic without any fever and suffering from headaches. I fall asleep right after eating. Maybe I've been overdoing it at work. Luckily, my husband took our daughter out to a nearby large shopping mall, promising to contact me if anything came up. Grateful for his thoughtfulness, allowing me some much-needed rest, I was dozing off. "I'm back." I woke up to the sound of the front door and my husband's voice. I realized it was already evening. I had slept through the day without having lunch since before noon. "Welcome back. Sorry, honey, I couldn't play with you today. Did you have fun?" I asked our daughter, holding a palm-sized character mascot she must have gotten while out. But she nodded quietly, looking down, unlike her usual self. I tilted my head, puzzled by her unusual behavior. "What's wrong? Did something happen? Maybe she's just tired from walking around all day. You should take a shower and rest early, okay?" My husband gently placed his hand on our daughter's shoulder, and she nodded slightly before heading to her room. When she was out of sight, I quietly asked my husband, "Hey, she seemed a bit off. Did you scold her or something?" "No, I didn't do anything. I think she's just tired. Anyway, about dinner." I tensed up at his words. I was frankly fed up with his cooking. "You know I'll cook tonight. I had a restful day and feel energized." "Oh, okay. Then I'll prepare the nightcap. I even bought dessert as usual," he smiled, lifting a bag that clearly had the logo of a famous cream puff shop. "Let's make tonight's meal low-calorie and nutritious." Later, we had dinner together and decided to sleep together for the first time. Though she smiled when it was just the two of us, I could tell she was anxious and wanted to spend as much time together as possible. "Mom, I have something to say." In the privacy of our bedroom, wrapped in blankets, my daughter whispered in a voice so faint I almost missed it. What is it?" "Please don't drink any alcohol tonight," she said. What could this be? Another instance of her slight precognitive ability? Nodding in response to my daughter's serious gaze, she closed her eyes, seemingly reassured. So before my husband could prepare our nightcap, I went to bed and decided to sleep early. Surely he wouldn't go as far as to wake me up for a drink. If he tries to wake me, I'll just pretend to be asleep. With that thought in mind, I closed my eyes. "Mum, hey Mum, wake up." I was suddenly shaken awake, my eyes barely opened to see my daughter's anxious face looming in my blurry vision. I realized I had actually fallen asleep, my vision blurry as my daughter's anxious face came into view. Checking the bedside clock, I saw it was 2 a.m., and I noticed my husband, who should have been sleeping next to me, was absent. Maybe he went to the bathroom. Slowly sitting up, I asked her, "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" "No, Mom, please. We need to run away from Dad now, hurry." That single word snapped me out of my grogginess. What did she just say? I asked her quietly, still in shock. Why? Why would you say that? This is our chance while Dad's not here. Because if we don't, something bad's going to happen to you, Mom, like getting sick or an accident, she explained urgently. What do you mean? I stared dumbfounded. My daughter, unable to hold back any longer, started to cry. Holding her in my lap and gently stroking her trembling back, she gradually calmed down and began to speak. According to her, while returning from the restroom at the mall, she overheard her dad on the phone. Having always been told not to interrupt when someone is on the phone, She approached quietly. Dad was saying, just a little longer, and she'll be gone, planning to make it look like an accident or illness. Once that's done, we can be together with the insurance money. Who was he talking to? I asked, shaken. I don't know. At first, I thought it was you, Mom, but it wasn't because Dad. He was saying bad things about you, and he said, I love you to the person. My daughter was sobbing. If this was true, my husband was planning to send me to my demise. Besides, my husband is having an affair, my daughter continued. He said, I love you to someone, not Mom, she added. I was so shocked. I accidentally called out to Dad. Then Dad immediately ended the call and asked, How long have you been there? When I said, Just now, he smiled and said, Let's keep this our little secret from Mom. If you don't tell, you'll get a new kind and sweet mom. Tears and snot streamed down her face as she clung to me. But I want you. I don't need another mom. I love you so much, she wailed, clinging to me. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt for putting her through this and anger towards my husband. My daughter had braved her fears to protect me from her own father. How scared she must have been, how much courage she must have needed. Afterwards, holding my daughter, we went downstairs to the entrance. The moment I noticed my husband's favorite shoes were missing, any slight trust I had in him vanished alongside my daughter's words. According to her, this wasn't the first time he had left in the middle of the night. She had seen him leave several times when going to the bathroom. How had I never noticed before, even in deep sleep? If my daughter rarely wakes up at night and had seen him leave multiple times, it must have been frequent. My daughter was gripping the hem of my dress tightly. Her actions made me realize there was no time to doubt my husband. That's right. This is not the time for that. I need to respond to my daughter's courage, I thought. Perhaps because I hadn't drunk any alcohol. I felt more alert and clear-headed than usual. Looking into my daughter's eyes, I said, Emily, if we run away from Dad now, we might never see him again. Will you still come with me? Yes, I'm scared of Dad. I want to be with you, Mom, she replied, her voice filled with determination. I want to stay with you forever, she said. All right, I made up my mind. Fortunately, my daughter was in the middle of her summer vacation. I told her to pack what she needed, and I quickly packed our bags as well. Then I was stunned as I checked the contents of the drawer where I kept our valuables. Opening another drawer that I rarely opened, my suspicion was confirmed. A surge of anger rose within me, but for now, leaving was the priority. We hurriedly left the house before dawn and decided to seek refuge at my parents' house. My parents were surprised to see us arrive so early in the morning, but they kindly welcomed us. After showing them what I found just before leaving and explaining what my daughter had told me, after the day had fully dawned, I sent a casual message. Mom got hurt. I'm taking my daughter to help out for about a month or so. Please take care of the house while we're gone. Got it? Leave everything here to me. He was surprisingly calm about his daughter and wife disappearing overnight. Clearly, he must be smirking, thinking he can now do as he pleases alone. I'll lay low for now, but I won't let this go for my daughter's sake. As soon as we arrived at my parents' house, my daughter, still with tear stains on her cheeks, fell asleep. Looking at her sleeping face, I made a certain phone call. About a month after taking refuge at my parents' house, I decided to return home, leaving my daughter with my mom. Entering the living room after unlocking the door, my smartphone in my chest pocket, my husband, who had been holding his head in front of his smartphone, gave me a forced smile, as if nothing had happened. Oh, welcome back. Don't just come back suddenly like that. You surprised me. How about I make you a nice iced coffee with lots of milk and sugar? If it were the old me, I might have been deceived, but not today. I don't need it. Instead, I want you to write this. I confronted my husband, who was about to head to the kitchen, with divorce papers. He sighed deeply after glancing at them. Divorce, huh? Well, if that's what you really want, I'll agree. His reaction was expected, but it infuriated me. He casually accepted it with a smile. I'll agree to the divorce since you're the one asking for it, but you'll meet my demands for the settlement, right? What are you talking about? You're the one who'll be paying. My husband looked puzzled. He shook his head unwillingly, with a forced smile. Come on, I've been supporting you in my way, and now you're handing me divorce papers unilaterally? A good husband, the kind that skips work for affairs and plans to put his wife in danger. What are you talking about? I couldn't help but snort at his dumbfounded face. I pulled out a small bottle, filled with pills from a drawer I hardly use, and showed it to him. The label read, "For stubborn insomnia. 1 pill for a good night's sleep." That's it. I bought it because I couldn't sleep well. It's obvious if you look at it. The amount hasn't decreased since I left. I'd opened and took pictures of everything before I left. Want me to compare? Don't talk nonsense. Besides, where's the proof that I gave those to you? Everything you've been doing with your mistress. I know all about it, I said, returning to my seat with the bottle in hand. Pulling an envelope from my bag and spilling its contents, my husband froze in shock. No wonder those were printouts of messages he had sent to his mistress. It says things like, "I'm skipping work to see you. Wait for me. I quit my job so we can talk more. Love you. I've got something that'll make sure she won't wake up. I can visit you during that. Think we can be together soon. Wait for me, my princess." He sent this kind of message. Every lie about working late and his plans to make my demise look like an accident or illness were detailed. Thinking back, the meals he prepared for me were high in salt, fat, and even sugary desserts. It's no wonder my health declined. Plus, he probably tampered with my drinks while I took a shower. I didn't drink often, so I didn't notice. But when I drank the same thing at my parents' house, the difference in taste was shocking and confirmed my suspicions. I started feeling unusually tired after beginning to eat your meals. I never felt refreshed despite falling asleep quickly. No wonder, with alcohol and these pills mixing, them is the worst. Imagine what could have happened, I said, watching as my husband's face turned pale and his eyes darted around. That's how come you had the stuff. Don't tell me you snooped through my phone. That's a violation of privacy, he accused. No, I got it from her, your mistress, I said, flipping over a second envelope to show him. His face went white. No wonder. The scattered photos showed him getting cozy with a young woman right after returning to my parents' house, believing my daughter's words. "I had a great time with the $20,000 I recently saved up." After returning from a week-long trip overseas, my mother-in-law Isabella called me excitedly, mentioning something about saving $20,000. I was puzzled because I didn't remember having such a large sum. As a freelancer, I do have some emergency savings in my bank account, but I don't usually keep that much cash. Plus, my banking card was right here, and no one else should be able to withdraw such a large amount without my knowledge. Isabella claimed she took the money from the sideboard drawer, assuming we were rich. I thanked her for her good intentions, but didn't understand why she thought I had given her the money. After this brief conversation, I wondered where the $20,000 came from. The mystery was solved when Anthony, presumably her husband, returned home a month later. Fast forward to a month later, and Isabella made over 80 calls, which I ignored. When I finally answered, she accused me of something, and I didn't quite understand. It seemed like she was upset, but I couldn't figure out why. Isabella's persistent calls became annoying, and when I finally answered, she started blaming me for something. Confused, I realized she was reaping what she had sown. Isabella's voice echoed loudly through the phone speaker as I learned her name was Scarlett, a 32-year-old freelance jewelry designer. "I really want children, but my job keeps me very busy. My husband, Anthony, who is the same age as me, used to have a regular job, but now he helps manage my work. When we got married, I wasn't making much as a designer, and we relied on Anthony's income. However, as I turned 30, my work became more stable, and I needed help managing my schedule. Anthony, who had a good position at his job, decided to quit and join me as a business partner. With his help, we now have deals with famous international brands. Although we face challenges as a couple, the main issue is Anthony's mother, Isabella, who lives alone in his family home. Isabella thinks we're living a luxurious life and often asks for money. She believes we live extravagantly, attending fancy parties and dinners with company executives. While these events are part of my job as a jewelry designer, Isabella sees them as leisure. She even asks for money to throw a party for her friends. I can afford to give her money, but it's not as glamorous as it seems. These events are expensive, and I have business obligations that I can't refuse. We're now living in luxury. It's all part of our work, dressing up beautifully and eating at expensive places. Isabella often expresses her envy towards us with a hint of sarcasm. Despite my continuous refusals to her requests, Anthony, being her son, sometimes gives in and hands her money. He believes it's a small price to pay to keep her quiet and avoid interruptions to our work. However, Isabella's demands only increase, leaving both of us frustrated. Recently, Isabella came over and pestered Anthony about buying a new dress for an upcoming gathering. Despite suggesting a more affordable two-piece suit, she insisted on an expensive dress for the fancy party. I believe proper attire, whether old or new, shouldn't matter, but Isabella makes a fuss. She also added that she needed a matching bag and was counting on us for that. To address Isabella's constant money demands, Anthony set up a credit card in her name, telling her to use it for her expenses. Initially, she overspent and got warned by Anthony. He then asked her to report before making significant purchases. However, Isabella continued to overspend, once even buying an expensive ring without prior notice. The bill became astronomical, and Anthony, who was paying the bills, couldn't afford it. Isabella seemed to think the credit card meant endless spending without consequences. Anthony, frustrated with the situation, decided to put a limit on her card spending. Isabella stormed in, complaining that she couldn't pay for her recent shopping, not realizing the financial strain her overspending was causing us. "We've lowered your monthly limit, but it's still enough, right?" Isabella challenged, questioning the fairness of our lifestyle. She argued that her desire for fun and luxury wasn't much different from our work-related dressing up and attending fancy places. We explained that events like product launches and parties were part of our job, often taking place in luxurious venues. However, Isabella perceived it as us having fun rather than working. Since putting a limit on her credit card, she had quieted down a bit. Occasionally, she would come to our house and complain to Anthony, but life went on without major issues. As the year-end approached, a foreign brand approached me with a proposal to expand our business overseas. Excited about the opportunity, I saw it as a chance to join the ranks of top-tier designers. Anthony, handling things as my manager, saw it as a rare opportunity we had to take. However, there was a concern about Isabella. Given her past behavior, it was plausible that she might want to come with us. When we told her about our plans that weekend, she reacted just as we predicted. Isabella insisted we were trying to trick her and live even more lavishly overseas. Anthony tried to explain that it was for work, not leisure, but Isabella wouldn't give up, fearing we planned to move there permanently. "We'll come back after our work settles down overseas," I reassured Isabella. She seemed worried that our plans would leave her behind. Both Anthony and I were exhausted from this circular argument. We couldn't take her with us, but Anthony, worn out from convincing her, suggested paying for a week-long trip for her instead. "Really? Are you sure?" Isabella half-happily accepted, and Anthony promised to cover her flight and hotel expenses. However, the peace didn't last long. A few days later, while Anthony was busy with overseas arrangements, Isabella visited our house. "Anthony said that, but I want to shop over there too. Can you give me some money?" she requested. I asked about the card Anthony had given her, and she admitted he had taken it away, fearing she might misuse it with different currency rates overseas. I explained that I couldn't give her money without Anthony's approval. Isabella left, raising her voice, and over the New Year's, she went on a 7-day trip abroad. Upon her return, Isabella revealed an unbelievable truth. She called me excitedly, sharing her experiences and mentioning she had overspent on souvenirs. Feeling fed up, I asked about the money she claimed I had saved up for her. I had no recollection of such money, and the situation took an unexpected turn. I had some savings in my bank account for business emergencies, but Isabella couldn't possibly withdraw cash from it. Despite what she claimed, I had no memory of it. She said she found $20,000 in our house's sideboard drawer, and I was confused about why such money would be there. I couldn't imagine us keeping such a large amount of cash at home. I told Isabella that if she took money from our house without permission, it amounted to theft, even if she's family. I emphasized the seriousness of the situation, especially if Anthony had set the money aside for an important deal. There hadn't been any disruption in our business dealings or payments while Isabella was on her trip. Isabella nonchalantly admitted to using the money, saying, "I'm telling you now that I used it." I pointed out that taking someone else's money without permission is a crime and expressed my concern about her entitled reasoning. Isabella defended herself, saying, "You too live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that?" Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. I found her reasoning inappropriate, considering she took money without asking. I promised to ask Anthony about the money when he got back. Isabella believed Anthony would understand, being his only mother, and claimed that $20,000 wasn't much to him. I agreed to pass along the message, still uncertain about the entire situation. I was amazed at Isabella's lack of awareness, and she ended the call by saying, "Please tell him that, thanks." Still baffled by the $20,000 in cash at home, I asked Anthony about it when he returned that night. Anthony had withdrawn the money from his bank account 10 days ago for an urgent payment. He needed cash immediately, but I was surprised that he kept such a large sum in a drawer, considering the potential risks. Anthony, looking troubled, asked if I knew anything about it. Today, Isabella called, thanking us for the $20,000 and mentioning she had a blast with it. I didn't understand what she meant, but it turned out the money was Anthony's after all. However, we still didn't know what such a large amount was meant for. I questioned Anthony about why he had left such a large sum at home, especially when we usually did bank transfers. Anthony explained that after limiting Isabella's credit card amount, she had secretly borrowed money from various sources, including consumer finance cards and credit cards she had opened without his knowledge. When Anthony discovered this, he took all her cards and prepared the cash to repay Isabella's growing debt. Although he gave her the cash, he knew she might spend it recklessly. The situation became clearer, but the mystery of Isabella's actions remained. I planned to pay the institutions directly through bank transfers, but Anthony preferred fewer records in our bank accounts for the sake of trust with our business partners in bookkeeping. So he decided to withdraw the cash and pay individually. Supporting Isabella's overseas trip was like a parting gift, knowing we wouldn't be able to take care of her like before after moving abroad. As time passed, Isabella's calls to my mobile phone became frequent, almost 80 calls every day. Anthony had advised me not to bother with her, but the persistence made me concerned. One day, Isabella's voice sounded almost like a cry as she apologized for bothering me during the busy moving preparations. She explained that she was receiving payment demands almost every day, and Anthony seemed to be blocking her calls. Isabella couldn't get through to him and pleaded for my help, saying I was her only hope. I was surprised that Anthony would take such a drastic step with his own mother. If he had used the money he prepared to pay off Isabella's debts, this situation might have been avoided. Now Isabella was inundated with collection letters from finance companies and consumer lenders, facing non-stop collections calls and seeming helpless to do anything about it. It was a scene I had only seen in dramas before. I mentioned it to Anthony, but I couldn't predict his response. Isabella pleaded for help, saying it was a son's duty to assist his mother. The call ended, and I told Anthony about it when he returned home, but he dismissed it coldly, stating that Isabella wasted the opportunity herself. Despite the continued calls from Isabella, I decided to block her number, following Anthony's lead. While I wished I could help, being Anthony's mother meant there was nothing I could do if he had chosen to ignore her. As the day of our move overseas approached, I needed to finish packing. Looking around the still cluttered room, I couldn't shake the lingering feeling of helplessness in the face of Isabella's predicament. It turned out that Isabella had to sell her house to settle her debts. In addition to the $20,000 Anthony had intended to use for repayment, she had hidden even more debts. The amount was so substantial that even after selling her land and house, she couldn't fully clear it. The total balance was unimaginable. Our family home was gone, and Anthony, though somewhat sad, acknowledged there was nothing we could do. Losing the house where one grew up must have felt like a significant loss. Anthony, having lost his place to return to because of his living mother, must have been feeling a deep sense of loss. Isabella now lived in a cheap apartment, struggling to repay the remaining debts with her part-time job. At her age, finding work must be challenging. I felt a bit of sympathy for her. However, the consequences of her spending led to this, so she was to blame. Even for the elderly, taking responsibility for their actions is necessary. Despite the challenges, my business was thriving overseas, and the move had brought more inquiries from other brands. I received offers from unexpected places, something I couldn't have imagined back home. Although it was all appreciated, I was so busy that I barely had time to sleep. Anthony, too, was occupied with various tasks. At this rate, having children was still a distant thought. I pondered this as I gazed at the foreign cityscape outside the window. My husband's mom, Mill, compared my pregnancy to my sister-in-law's, saying hers was perfect and mine wasn't. After my sister-in-law gave birth, both she and my husband stopped talking to Mill. My husband and I have been married for more than 2 years, and we've been together for 7. He's amazing, the man of my dreams, and we have a great life together. My big Mexican family loves him, and I haven't heard anyone say they don't like him. He's respectful to everyone, which is why I fell in love with him. We rarely argue, except when it comes to his mom, Mill. Mill is difficult to deal with. My husband's family is smaller than mine. Besides his parents, he has a sister who got married last year. His parents are conservative Christians from a small town, and his mom is overly protective and controlling. She insists on spending holidays together as a family and causes a scene if we don't agree. When I first met his family, his dad and I got along fine. His sister treats me like her own sister, but his mom is a different story. She says sexist things to me, like when I told them I'm a marine biologist specializing in conservation efforts for marine life. His dad thought it was awesome, but Mill didn't say anything and just frowned. Later, my husband's dad called him to say that Mill wanted him to end our relationship because she thinks I'm not good enough for her son. She believes I don't act like a woman should because I have a job. I really enjoy being a scientist, and my husband has never told me to be a housewife or choose a stereotypically feminine job. If he had, we probably wouldn't be together. But apparently, that's what his mother, Mill, thought he needed. She complained that with my well-paying job, I might not become a housewife after marriage, and he should have found a better woman. My husband firmly told his dad, Phil, to let his mother know that who he chooses to marry is none of her business. I was relieved he stood up for me. This was a positive sign for me, and it's why I didn't end our relationship right then and thereafter hearing what his mother thought about me. Unfortunately, as we got more serious, Mill became worse towards me. Despite my husband trying to protect me, she made snide comments when we were alone, insisting that a good wife should be a homemaker. She also repeatedly told me I didn't look like the kind of woman my husband should have brought home because I'm not feminine enough to carry children. At first, I thought she might be joking, but when she kept saying it, I realized she was serious. One day during dinner at her insistence, she went on a rant about missing a time when women took care of their families and men went out to earn. My husband responded, saying the world doesn't work like that anymore, and he's lucky to have a partner like me. We both earn well and take care of the house together. Mill shook her head, insisting that women should act like women and men should act like men. I knew she was intentionally talking about me, but I tried to stay calm. Phil told her to calm down and that it wasn't the right time for that kind of discussion. However, she got upset, seeing he wasn't supporting her. She continued saying she was just speaking the truth and wanted the best for her son. Then she looked pointedly at me. I had enough, so I quietly got up from the table and asked my husband to drive me home, which he readily agreed to. He looked at his mother with disappointment and we left. Later, when Phil called to mend things, I firmly told him it wasn't up to Mill to decide who her son marries, and she should stop taunting me about having a job. Phil agreed and tried to apologize on her behalf, but I wasn't having it. My husband supported me and told his dad that if she didn't apologize, he wouldn't go back to see her. Perhaps this threat scared her into apologizing to me, and she promised never to bring it up again. So I managed to let that situation roll off my shoulders. Unfortunately, some issues don't go away easily. Just a few months later, when my husband and I first started living together before getting married, and I had to go on a research expedition for a few weeks, she found out. She called me to ask who would take care of the house and her son. I was confused, put her on speaker so my husband driving next to me could hear, and asked her what she meant by that. She started to say how now that I was living with her son, I needed to stop being so immature. She kept saying I shouldn't go on these expeditions and should commit more to being a good partner to her son. My husband angrily told her he didn't need anyone to take care of him, and we were equal partners sharing responsibilities. She got upset, saying we couldn't get married because I didn't know how to be a proper wife. My husband asked her to mind her own business and cut her call. When he proposed, my Mill wasn't happy. She was even more upset when she learned we wanted a small wedding due to the expense and our plans to move into our own place. I decided to invite only close family members, with plans for a celebration with others later. But Mill argued with my husband, wanting to invite all her friends. When he asked if she would pay for their plates, she got offended, saying we both earned well and should be ashamed to ask. We stuck to our decision for a small wedding, making it clear she'd be responsible for any uninvited guests she invited. During the wedding, she loudly complained about everything and made it clear she hated my wedding gown. I ignored her because I didn't want to be hurt by her mean comments. My sister tried her best to keep Mill away from me for the rest of the evening. Last year in mid-April, we found out I was pregnant, which was great news since we had been trying for some time. We waited until I was around 9 weeks pregnant to tell our close family and friends. My Mill was upset she wasn't the first to know. She called me, saying she had every right to know first, and she was disappointed in me. I told her we wanted to wait before sharing such important news, and if she wanted to complain, she could. She could feel free to call my husband, as I was in no mood to listen to her lectures about what a good woman should do. Just a month after I announced my pregnancy, Sil told us she was pregnant too. We were shocked yet pleased, knowing there would be a new addition to our family. Sil wasn't married but had a serious longtime boyfriend whom we had all met. I knew Mill would make a big deal about Sil's pregnancy before marriage, which she did. My husband supported his sister, and eventually, Mill accepted it. Phil was emotional and happy to have 2 grandchildren. Sil and I started spending more time together since we were simultaneously pregnant. We leaned on each other for advice and companionship during this magical yet challenging period. While shopping for our babies and deciding on nurseries, Mill started constantly comparing our pregnancies. She turned it into a competition, saying Sil was better equipped to be a mother since she had always been a homemaker, unlike me with a job. Sil and I were bothered by her remarks. During my gender reveal party, I asked Sil to find out the baby's gender from our doctor to prepare the envelope. She did the same for her party. Mill became furious, having a meltdown, accusing me of taking away her grandchild by not allowing her to organize the gender reveal. She insisted my husband should put his foot down so she could be more involved. My husband didn't like how she was speaking to me, so he told her to leave or be permanently cut off from our grandchild's life. She made a scene, crying and insisting she wanted the best for her grandchild, but eventually left. Later, Phil and Sil called concerned about her behavior. We had to explain everything. Sil was shocked and urged me to rest, given the stressful situation. I was distressed after my Mill's screaming episode during Christmas. My husband told her we wouldn't be coming because I couldn't travel long distances due to my condition. She got upset, accusing him of straying away from the family, and hung up when he refused to change his decision. We hoped she understood, but a week later, she texted asking us to be at her place at 4:00 p.m. My husband reminded her about our earlier conversation, but she called screaming again, claiming he had no right to avoid family and accusing me of deterring him. My husband stood his ground, and she started yelling about him needing to control me. I began realizing how controlling and toxic Mill was becoming. I shared my concerns with my husband and Sil, and they agreed she was crossing the line. However, dealing with their mother was exhausting. When it was time to give birth, we didn't have time to inform anyone as I went into preterm labor at 33 weeks. Our baby boy was born at 34 weeks via an emergency C-section. After confirming our well-being, my husband announced our son's birth in the family group chat and informed my family. Everyone congratulated me, but Mill had another meltdown for not being told about the labor and birth. She texted us, insisting she should have been in the delivery room, watching her grandchild come into the world. I didn't reply, focused on my baby. When we announced his name, she called my husband, crying that it sounded too Mexican. She suggested a different name, but we didn't listen. When it was time for her to meet our son, she insisted on calling him a completely different name. My husband firmly asked her to stop, but she tried justifying it as her special little name for him. She also hates that I breastfeed my son because it takes him away from her. She suggests I start feeding him formula so she can spend more time with him. My mother explained the importance of breast milk for a newborn, but Mill argued it was unfair. Her taunts and controlling nature became unbearable. The final straw came when she invited me to lunch to discuss something important. Despite trying to cancel, she insisted we meet. At lunch, she asked about our son's godfather. I knew she wouldn't like the answer. I explained that my husband and I had chosen each other as our children's godparents. Mill burst into tears in the restaurant, yelling about how I could do this to her. She insisted she should be my son's godmother as his grandparent. I reminded her of her belief that Sil was better equipped, so she should be happy that my son would be taken care of well. She argued only she could be trusted and demanded to be his godparent. Fed up, I firmly told her we were done discussing it, and she could talk to my husband later. I told Sil about the lunch, and she didn't like that Mill wanted to be our son's godparent. My husband, too, couldn't understand Mill's behavior and ignored her calls. Last week, Sil gave birth to her daughter, and she asked me to be in the delivery room for support. I happily obliged, with my husband and mother caring for our son at home. After Sil gave birth, I made sure her boyfriend took over the duties. He revealed that apparently Sil, tired of Mill's toxic behavior, took a stand and decided to implement a no-contact rule between Mill and her daughter. Sil asked the hospital to refuse Mill entry, allowing only Phil inside to meet the baby. This decision was shocking and unexpected, as I had never imagined Sil would stand up to Mill in this way. It made me realize why Mill had been calling me all day, possibly trying to blame me or convince me to persuade Sil to see her granddaughter. When I talked to Sil later, I found out that this decision came after witnessing the extent of Mill's actions towards me over the years. Going no contact was a necessary boundary to protect her daughter from Mill's toxic influence. It was a moment of reckoning for Mill, as the consequences of her actions finally came crashing down. The fallout has been severe, and Mill is completely cut off from her daughter's life, unable to witness precious moments with her grandchild. Since then, I have started to think if it would be the right decision for us to cut off Mill permanently as well. Would it be too cruel? Update 1. Hello everyone. First off, I want to thank you all for your kind words and advice. It means a lot to me. My husband and I have not had any contact with Mill since we found out that Sil has cut her off. She continues to call us, but we ignore them. After discussing with my husband, we agreed that for our mental peace, it would be better to cut her out permanently, as there is no guarantee she won't behave the same way with our son. Everyone asking why we waited so long. My husband grew up in this toxic environment and didn't fully realize how wrong it was until his mother started misbehaving with me. He has always supported and protected me, but his mother is just too much to handle. We set up a group video call with his sister and Phil, where we discussed our decision, and they are on our side. Now we just need to inform Mill about our decision. Update 2. If you're itching for an update, sit down. It's a bit long. My husband decided to call his mother and tell her about our decision yesterday evening. When she first picked up the call, she started screaming at him about how long it had been since he talked with her and that she wanted to meet our son immediately. My husband remained quiet and until she was done with her demands, and then gently let her know how she was right and that he needed to step up and be more of a man. Mill immediately agreed, saying this is what she had wanted from him all along. But my husband interrupted her, stating as a man of our family, he had decided to cut her off from us permanently to protect us from her toxic ideology and drama. Mill was dumbfounded at first, perhaps trying to process what he had just spoken. When she understood the severity of our decision, she started saying she was coming over to meet us and that nothing could stop her from meeting her grandson. My husband immediately warned her that we wouldn't let her in, and we would call the police on her for trespassing on our property. She then started screaming, claiming it was probably my decision and that I was tearing the family apart. My husband told her to think whatever she wanted, but he was done with her. She continued to scream, saying this is why he should have never married a woman like me and that she knew I was bad news all along. Naturally, my husband got angry. He reminded her that we were not the only ones cutting off contact, and Sil has done the same thing, so the issue is clearly her, and she needs to start accepting that. Mill, as usual, kept arguing back, claiming I had polluted the minds of everyone and successfully taken her children away from her. Exasperated, my husband told her if she wanted to blame someone, she should blame herself for being bitter and racist. He said everyone was just done with her, and she needed to come to terms with her own actions. This shut my Mill up, and he blocked her after their conversation. I have done the same. I've also informed my family about the situation and not to pick up Mill's calls for now. I feel bad for my husband and Sil for not having a supportive mother, but I'm also glad that I won't ever have to go through such shitty situations ever again. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I'm happy to share that our son is doing well. S and I continue to remain close, meeting regularly for playdates with our babies. It's adorable to see how they are bonding, and I hope they continue to be each other's best friends as they grow up. Another happy update is that Sil is finally getting married to her baby daddy, as we all knew she would. Now, on to the main update. We continue to have no contact with Mill. For those concerned about our safety, don't worry, we have cameras installed everywhere, and we changed our locks. There's no way Mill can disturb us. I doubt she will ever confront us publicly, since many people know exactly why we cut her off, and she must be embarrassed. After we cut off all contact, she did try to persuade Phil to talk with us, but he refused and let her know he was getting sick of her too. I guess when her own husband told her this, it might have finally made her think. A few weeks later, she asked Phil to tell us how sorry she was for everything she had done to me. I doubt she genuinely feels apologetic, which is why we continue to not talk with her. Until today, Phil and my family continue to visit us and bond with our grandchild, which is how it's going to be in the near future.
I can't believe you brought homemade pudding. My business partner teased me, expecting fancier desserts. He tossed the pudding in the trash, leaving me speechless. Feeling angry and helpless, I went home. My wife seemed oddly cheerful, promising that the rude man would face consequences. The next day, something surprising happened when I went to meet the president. My name is Danny Klein, and I've been working in an office for 10 years now. Today, I'm feeling nervous because I have to bring a gift to a tough business partner named Walter Morris. He's picky about gifts, and if he doesn't like yours, he won't even talk to you properly. Sometimes he'll even make up excuses to send you away. But he's important for our business, so I have to deal with him. One day, my manager came to my desk and praised our company's great patented technology. I agreed, but also mentioned how they've become arrogant because of it. We used to work together closely, but things have changed. My manager looked at me sympathetically. I chuckled bitterly and ran my hand through my hair. I've heard that the president and his wife are nice people, despite Walter being difficult. I hope things improve soon. Yeah. Things should get better soon. It's tough, but it's all part of the job. Thanks, I'll give it my best shot, I replied to my manager. But finding the right gift every time is such a hassle. If I get him the same thing again, he accuses me of being lazy, I complained. My manager suggested, the president's wife really likes pudding. Maybe next time you see them, consider getting some pudding. As soon as my manager mentioned it, I thought of a special pudding from a local store. It was incredibly smooth and creamy, just melting in your mouth. It had the perfect balance of richness and sweetness, exactly like the pudding my wife, Lily, makes. Lily runs a small pastry shop from our home, and her puddings are a hit with everyone in the neighborhood. They're so popular that they often sell out by mid-afternoon, loved by both kids and seniors alike. After work, I hurried home to find Lily already in the kitchen, preparing dinner. As I entered, a sweet aroma filled the air, making me smile. Lily greeted me with a cheerful welcome home, humming a tune as she worked. Excitedly, I told her about my conversation with the boss and how his wife loved pudding. I want to take some as a gift. Can you make some? I asked eagerly. Lily hesitated for a moment before asking, Do you think my pudding will be good enough? I could see a hint of nervousness behind her smile, but it reassured me. Even though Lily makes amazing puddings, making one as a gift for my business partner's wife was understandably stressful for her. Still, she agreed with a nod and said, okay. Once dinner was ready, Lily didn't even sit down to eat. Instead, she jumped straight into preparing the pudding for tomorrow, insisting she needed to get it done. Thank you, Lily. I'm sorry, I said, feeling grateful but guilty. It's no problem. I want more people to taste my pudding, Lily replied cheerfully, diving into the preparations. She moved back and forth between the kitchen and her shop, busy with the task. Seeing her determination, I couldn't just stand there watching. I decided to pitch in and help, following Lily's instructions closely. We ended up staying up later than usual, eagerly anticipating the reaction of the boss and his wife the next day. I fell asleep almost instantly. The next morning, I woke up to find Lily already awake, her head popping out from the shop, wearing a white apron. It's ready, she announced, holding a tray of neatly wrapped puddings in her hands. Thank you, Lily, I expressed my gratitude, not knowing how early she must have woken up to prepare everything. I thanked her repeatedly, feeling appreciative of her effort. Lily, looking a bit bashful, responded, It didn't take too long because you helped me. As I reminisced about the morning's activities, a smile crept onto my face. I carefully placed the puddings, wrapped in white paper bags with blue ribbons, on the passenger seat and let out a sigh. With renewed confidence, I started the company car. There shouldn't be any problem with Lily's pudding. It's sure to impress. That's what I believed, until I heard a voice that crushed my hopes. What's this? Just like always. I mentioned Walter's name to the receptionist with a smile, and she asked me to wait for a moment. Taking a seat in the entrance, I made sure the pudding in the bag was safe. As I waited, I noticed Walter approaching from the elevator, wearing a slight smile. When he glanced at what I was holding, he immediately questioned, What is this? With doubt in his voice. I couldn't help but flinch. Nevertheless, I replied calmly, It's just a small gift. It's pudding made by my wife, who runs a pastry shop. But before I could finish, Walter scoffed, Pudding, are you mocking me? Shouldn't you bring something fancier? His words were filled with disdain, and he looked at me as if he were mocking me. At first, I didn't understand, but as it sank in, I felt my fists clenching in anger. Walter was a client I had been working with smoothly until now. I couldn't afford to ruin our relationship, so I swallowed my emotions and tried to reason with him. Even though it's not fancy, my wife's puddings are quite popular, I explained, but Walter dismissed it, saying, No way. I can't eat pudding made by an amateur. He snatched the bag of pudding from my hand roughly, leaving me stunned. What are you doing? I exclaimed, taken aback. My anxious voice clashed with Walter's dry laughter, attracting curious glances from the receptionist and other employees passing by. I can't believe you give me such low-quality stuff, Walter remarked, lifting the bag to his face with a scrutinizing gaze. My anger surged, but I fought to keep my cool. Then I heard him say, It's the CEO's wife's favorite. Even so, would you bring something made by an amateur? I defended, feeling the need to stand up for Lily's skill. My wife is definitely not an amateur. Even so, you must understand that I can't serve such an unsightly pudding to the president. With that, Walter released his grip on the bag, letting it fall into the trash can nearby. It happened so fast that I couldn't react, leaving me standing there in shock. The bag with the pudding inside made a mournful sound as it landed in the bin. A small gasp escaped from the receptionist nearby. "I'll take care of it for you today. Just be more careful next time," Walter stated, his voice dripping with irritation. All I could do was stare at the discarded pudding and mutter a barely audible, "I'm sorry." Walter nodded in response, his expression unreadable. Whether he was satisfied with my apology, I couldn't tell. "I've got some urgent matters to attend to. I hate to do this, but could you please leave?" Without waiting for my response, he turned and headed towards the elevator. I stood there stunned, unable to tear my gaze away from the discarded pudding. Time seemed to blur, and before I knew it, I found myself back in my company car. The memory of Lily's hard work on the pudding weighed heavily on my heart, filling me with a mix of sadness and anger. Most of all, I felt frustrated with myself for not being able to stand up for her or myself. All because Walter was a business partner. I couldn't focus on work that day, my mind consumed with how to tell Lily about what happened. When I got home, Lily greeted me with a smile, casually sipping tea on the couch. Caught off guard, I paused in untying my tie. "Did something happen?" Lily asked, noticing my hesitation and concern. Unable to hide it any longer, I confessed everything to her. "I'm sorry, he threw away the pudding you worked so hard on right in front of me." Lily looked surprised at first, but then she gently squeezed my hand. "It's not your fault. Maybe there was something wrong with the pudding." Deep down though, I knew that wasn't true. Walter hadn't even bothered to look inside the bag before tossing it away. It didn't matter what was inside. If it wasn't up to his standards, it was going in the trash. Before I could apologize again, Lily stopped me. She seemed to think for a moment, then grinned mischievously. "That man's getting fired." "Fired?" I questioned, taken aback by Lily's comment. "I'm just kidding though," she reassured me with a soft chuckle. Even though it might not have been perfect, it's still disheartening to hear that the pudding I worked so hard on was thrown away. Her reaction was understandable. Anyone would be upset to hear their efforts were disregarded like that, even Lily, who rarely makes such remarks about rude clients. "But who knows, it could happen," she added mysteriously, leaving me feeling a bit puzzled. But that was the end of our conversation. Lily urged me to wash up early that night, so I bathed in a mix of confusion and frustration before turning in earlier than usual. The next day, still feeling weighed down by yesterday's events, I headed to work with a heavy heart. My boss had instructed me the day before. "I know it's not ideal, but tomorrow you need to buy a cake from the high-end Western confectionery store in front of the station." His words echoed in my mind as I stopped by the pastry shop near the station on my way to work and bought a cake. I placed the box from the fancy pastry shop on the passenger seat, letting out a sigh heavier than the day before. Yesterday, I had promised Walter that I'd come back today with an apology gift. Maybe because of the incident, Walter had responded with an even more arrogant tone. "All right, I'm counting on you this time," he said before hanging up. I should get going, I told myself, mustering up some motivation as I settled into the driver's seat of my company car. I drove towards the client's office, determined to make things right. As I entered through the automatic doors, a receptionist who recognized me hurried over. "Are you Mr. Klein from Company X?" she asked. "Yes, that's me, but please, lead the way," I replied. Following her, I stepped into the elevator, and before I knew it, we had arrived at our destination floor. The room I was directed to turned out to be the president's office. The receptionist knocked a few times, and when the door opened, I was ushered in. Inside, I found the president of the client company, his wife, and Walter, all looking uneasy. I had expected Walter to be his usual arrogant self. Especially after yesterday's incident, but I was surprised. "Nice to meet you, I'm Danny Klein from Company XX. Thank you for having me here today," I said, puzzled by the situation, as I greeted the president, Mr. Peterson. "You must be Danny. Pleasure to meet you." "I'm Mr. Peterson, and this is my wife, Anne," Mr. Peterson replied, cutting the formalities short. They exchanged glances, then called my name and bowed deeply. "We are truly sorry for what happened. Please accept our apologies," Mrs. Peterson added sincerely. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" I asked, feeling surprised by how the president's tone suddenly changed. His wife, standing beside him, looked shocked too, bowing her head without saying a word. I quickly asked them to lift their heads, but they wouldn't. Then, I noticed Walter, who was standing behind them, also bowing. This was unusual because Walter was usually very proud and never apologized. But there he was, saying sorry with careful words for the first time. I was taken aback and didn't know what to say. Walter continued, "Actually, yesterday my wife found something in the lobby trash while she was cleaning." His wife nodded to confirm. She seemed upset and asked around about it. "She found out that the pudding you brought earlier had been thrown away disrespectfully by someone." We called him to ask, and at first, he denied it, but later he admitted it reluctantly. Mr. Peterson gave Walter a cold look, and Walter seemed to feel it as he bit his lip and looked away. I didn't know Mrs. Peterson liked pudding. I thought it was from Danny, and I tossed it without thinking. "I'm sorry," Walter said, sounding quieter than usual. I was surprised by Walter's unusual behavior. Mrs. Peterson shook her head firmly. "That's not why I'm upset," she said in an angry tone, breaking her silence. "Danny, I've known about the pudding from Lily's store for a while. I knew it was really popular and always sold out quickly, even though the store was busy. You made the pudding for me. It's disappointing that an employee of a manufacturing company doesn't appreciate the effort put into making a product." I was shocked that Mrs. Peterson knew about Lily's store and understood the emotions behind making something. Walter, looking even more nervous, tried to apologize again, but Mr. Peterson told him to face the person he was apologizing to and lifted his pale face up. "Walter Hooper sincerely apologized to me for carelessly throwing away the handmade gift from your wife yesterday." He faced me directly, bowing his head repeatedly. In that moment, I felt a sense of clarity. When I got home, Lily was sitting on the sofa drinking tea, just like yesterday. Without saying hello, I told her about what had happened today. Lily listened to me without interrupting until I finished. Then she smiled and said, "I thought as much." Her calm demeanor suggested she had expected everything that happened. Lily got up and made a cup of tea for me from the kitchen. As she handed it to me, she began to speak. "Actually, yesterday evening, a man in a suit came to buy our pudding, but we were all out. He mentioned that the wife of his company's CEO loves our pudding. Could it be the president's wife he meant?" "Probably Ann Peterson," Lily said with excitement, nodding happily. "It's amazing to know there are people who appreciate the effort we put into our products. It motivates me to make even better things for them." Lily took a sip of her tea, still smiling. Seeing her so genuinely happy made me understand Mr. and Mrs. Peterson's words better, but it also made me feel guilty. Did I truly value the effort of producers like Lily while doing my job? I was angry at Walter's arrogance, but was it because I thought we were doing him a favor by selling our products? Maybe I was being carried away too. Like Lily, shouldn't I strive to connect the creator's thoughts with the consumers through my work? As I thought about all of this, Lily noticed something and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Perhaps from now on, you'll consider both the creators and the users' perspectives." Lily's words made me feel a bit embarrassed, but more importantly, they gave me a new outlook on my job. After everything that happened, Walter's attitude changed a lot. He wasn't as arrogant as before and stopped demanding gifts. Now, we openly share our opinions and have a better relationship. Like Lily, I want to keep delivering the creator's ideas to users through my work.
"This house is mine now, Mom. You can't come in anymore. Your key won't work, so you might as well throw it away." My daughter laughed when she saw me holding the key. My things were piled up by the door. I didn't understand why my daughter was treating me like this, especially when I was still sad about my husband's death. I felt lost and confused. "My name is Susan, and I'm 60 years old. My husband died recently after being sick for a long time. Many people came to his funeral and shared memories of him. We said goodbye to him with smiles instead of tears, just like he would have wanted. But even with all the support, I still felt very sad. We have a daughter named Emily. She got married and moved far away. And we haven't seen her much lately, even during holidays. She left quickly after briefly coming to her father's funeral. Before Emily got married, she was very close to us. She always said she couldn't stand the idea of living far away from us, even though we encouraged her to live independently after finding a job. She believed that meals tasted better when the family ate together. I usually came home late from work, so we made sure to have meals together on my days off. Maybe Emily said this to cheer up her father, who was getting weaker because of his illness. We were really happy and thankful for Emily's thoughtfulness. Then, Emily suddenly told us she was getting married and quickly got the marriage paperwork done. After that, she left our house in a rush. We were confused by her sudden decision. We only met her partner once and had a brief conversation with them. It seemed like they truly loved each other, and we only wished for Emily's happiness without interfering in their relationship. However, a few months after getting married, Emily stopped talking to us altogether. We worried a lot and kept sending her messages and calling her every day to check if she was okay. But she didn't reply to any of our messages or calls. Finally, when she did answer, she sounded annoyed and told us to stop bothering her. She even joked about only talking to us if we sent her money. During the day, she sounded like she was drunk and slurred her words. My husband heard all of this and just sighed deeply. Emily's behavior seemed to be influenced by her husband, Ole. After that, my husband never brought up Emily again. Some years later, Emily shamelessly asked us for money because she was having financial problems. That was the last time she and her father saw each other. Over the years, my husband and I made many memories together. We traveled and picked up new hobbies whenever he was well enough. Eventually, my husband passed away. When I came back home from his funeral, I was shocked to see movers directed by Emily piling up my belongings outside. She told them to just stack everything in a corner. When she saw me, she said, "Well, Mom, this isn't your home anymore. I've packed up your things. You'll have to find somewhere else to live before it starts raining and everything gets wet." Emily, why are you doing this? What's going on? Please, tell me what's happening. I was just so confused, not understanding anything. What's there to explain? You already know, don't you? This house is supposed to go to Emily after me. Don't act like you don't get it. Emily said this, and then a big man stepped out from behind her. It was because of him that Emily changed. His name is Ali, and he's Emily's husband. Meeting him changed Emily completely. We were introduced to him as a regular guy who worked at a company. But later we found out he was involved in shady business stuff. When we learned about this, we couldn't understand how our honest Emily ended up with someone like Ali, and we were really worried. Emily and Ali kept us away from them, but a few years ago, they suddenly came to our house and shamelessly asked my husband for money. It shook me deeply, but my husband stayed calm and mentioned a will that even I didn't know about back then. It clearly said that this house would go to Emily and everything else to me. Now that Dad has passed away, the house belongs to Emily, so outsiders should leave quickly. You have no right to live here. Don't pretend you've forgotten. Ali kicked my things aside and sneered, "But you can't just show up here all of a sudden." Seeing my stuff piled outside, I didn't know what to do. I felt completely lost. Now, Ole, don't be so harsh. Mom shouldn't stay here, but we're still family, right? Emily said this as she came closer to me while I held onto the key. "Don't be so sad. You'll always be my mom. You can use this key to come to the house anytime. Don't feel too down." Then she took the key from my hand and threw it as far as she could. "What's the matter with you?" The key flew through the air and disappeared. I was shocked by Emily's unexpected action. Turning back to her, I said, "I'm sorry about that." Upon closer inspection, I realized that the key was already useless. I forgot we changed the locks earlier. There was no point in you holding onto it, so I threw it away for you. Don't act like I've done something terrible. It's not that big of a deal. Emily and Ole looked at me in disbelief and burst into laughter. Emily's face, now completely different from before she got married, showed that she would do anything for her own benefit. I felt tears starting to form. Then I remembered my husband's gentle smile, as if he was telling me to stay strong. "Emily, I understand what you're trying to say, but you're getting the wrong idea. This isn't the right place to talk. Let's go inside." I urged Emily and Ole to come inside, but they resisted. "We're still moving in, and don't act like you're in charge, telling us where to talk. This isn't your house anymore. You need our permission to come in." Ali snapped back. Faced with Ali's rudeness, I insisted. "We need to discuss this house. It's not yours yet. I'm just about to explain, Emily interrupted. I've called someone who can explain it clearly, and he'll be here soon. Let's go inside and have some tea. If you keep refusing, I'll call the police. They'll make me say it again. This house doesn't belong to Emily. If you understand, come inside quickly. If you try anything, I'll be the one calling the police, I said firmly, unsettling them a bit. Well, it might be the last time we listen to an old woman's nonsense. You're getting old anyway. We'll hear you out this time. But if you talk nonsense, you'll have to pay for wasting our time, Ali threatened, sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed. Emily gave me a similar glare. It seemed like they had threatened people like this before to get what they wanted. This made me feel sad. Soon, the doorbell rang, and I let a man into the living room. He was the lawyer who had been there when my husband shared the details of the will. You're the lawyer from before, right? What are you trying to say? We've seen the will that says this house goes to Emily, and Dad said so. That's the truth, isn't it? Ali argued. As I mentioned earlier, there was a misunderstanding before. The will includes a condition, and if that condition happens, the inheritance changes, the lawyer clarified. Why are you confusing us with all these complicated terms? Emily responded in frustration. Seeing their confusion, the lawyer took over to explain. A conditional bequest with revocation means the will has conditions. In your father's will, the condition was that Susan could stay in the house as long as she's healthy. Emily would only inherit it if Susan couldn't live there anymore due to health issues or passed away. Your father was very clear about this. Ali and Emily looked completely confused. Did he really say that? Even if he did, we wouldn't remember. What's this talk about revocation? Emily shook her head in disbelief. Okay, then what about those conditions? Ali asked, sounding a bit shaken but still defiant. By trying to kick Susan out of the house, you violated the conditions of the will. Because of that, Emily lost her right to inherit the house, the lawyer explained straightforwardly. Wait. So you're saying I can't inherit just because of that? That's ridiculous. Emily exploded in frustration. That's the essence of this will. Breaking that condition, whether it's minor or major, leads to revocation, the lawyer explained calmly. When did we ever break that condition? Can you prove it? Ali leaned in, clearly trying to intimidate the lawyer. The lawyer cleared his throat. There was a moving truck outside, arranged by you two, wasn't it? You were trying to move your things in and live here without Susan's consent. Don't act like we did something wrong. We told Mom about it. She just forgot and panicked on her own. That's not our fault, Emily protested. Such childish excuses don't work in the adult world. Not only did you move in without permission, but you also threw my belongings outside. Telling me to leave quickly, the lawyer replied sternly. I never said that. You're the one lying. I can't believe my own mother would make up such accusations. If you keep this up, I'll sue you. Do you want that? Being sued by your own daughter is the last thing you want, right? So take back what you said. Emily threatened, her voice filled with anger. The lawyer remained composed and pulled out his phone. We can't retract the truth. Multiple witnesses saw and heard you telling Susan to leave. We've even recorded their testimonies. He played a video with statements from movers and neighbors. Everyone's stories match. They'd all say you two told Susan to leave. You could have paid them to say that. How can we trust this? Stop making a fool of us. Ali accused, but the lawyer ignored him. Instead, he produced a key. Emily, you took the key from Susan and threw it away, which was witnessed by many. I found this key exactly where it was described to be. Changing the locks means Susan can't enter or live here, breaking the condition that she can stay as long as she's healthy. So, you violated the terms of the inheritance. Don't spout whatever you want. If I get serious, I can ensure a lawyer like you never works again. Despite Ali's loud threats, the lawyer remained calm and continued. Therefore, this house will never belong to Emily, and you have no right to live here. Now please remove your belongings and return Susan's immediately. If you delay or try to stay, we'll report a breaking and entering crime to the police. You have 2 hours. Begin now. The lawyer clapped his hands sharply and checked the time on his wristwatch. Police, you say? Such nonsense won't intimidate me, Ali blustered, but the lawyer countered. I'm a professional. This is not a lie. Getting in trouble with the police over this would only cause more problems for you. Even Oli seemed to understand that this wasn't an empty threat. Oh no! Oli and Emily began sweating profusely and quickly got up to start moving their things. It seemed Ole was more bark than bite, like a big guy with no courage. I'm sorry. We'll put everything back right away, so please don't call the police, okay? Please? Emily pleaded sweetly with the lawyer and yelled at the movers outside to reload the truck. But they refused, saying there was no such agreement. In the end, Ollie had to rent a car and somehow managed to load their belongings. Just loading isn't enough. You must put everything back the way it was. If Susan's belongings are damaged or dirty, clean them up. Any damage, and we'll report property damage and seek compensation, the lawyer reiterated, pushing Oli and Emily to restore everything within 2 hours after loading their belongings. After loading their belongings, Emily tearfully asked Oli, "Now that we've packed up, what do we do?" "How should I know? It's because of your dad's strange will," Emily sharply retorted, blaming Oli for not paying attention to the will properly. Despite their argument, they drove off, leaving the scene. I thanked the lawyer profusely and returned to my home filled with memories of my husband, feeling relieved. Later, I heard that Oli and Emily had caused trouble in their previous town and moved to our house, almost like a secret escape. They had targeted me for inheritance money, but now they were gone. Emily, staying with Oli, seemed destined for a life of repeating mistakes. It pained me, but it was the path Emily chose. If they ever regretted their actions and wanted to live honorably, I'd be willing to help. My husband had mentioned something like this. For now, I'll enjoy my time in our shared house, perhaps even trying skydiving, something my husband had wanted to do. Looking up at the stars in the night sky, I felt my husband encouraging me, and I gently wiped away a tear.
Everyone was really excited as my daughter Marissa's wedding rehearsal dinner got going. I felt proud watching her and her fiancé Kevin, surrounded by our family and friends, getting lots of good wishes. But then something unexpected happened. Marissa spoke up, asking for everyone's attention. The room went quiet. My husband Ron and I looked at each other, confused. Marissa raised her glass. "I want to talk about something important," she said, looking right at me. "Elise, you might think of yourself as my stepmother, but to me, you're just someone I don't want in my life." The guests were shocked, and Ron looked really pale. I felt like I'd been hit hard, like all the air had been knocked out of me by what Marissa said. "What's going on, Marissa?" Ron asked, sounding shaky and shocked. "Don't act like you don't know, Dad," Marissa said with a sneer. "You know that Elise has been trying to become a part of our family since the beginning. Well, I'm done pretending she's not my mom because she never will be." Her words felt like a sharp knife stabbing into me. I looked at Marissa, hoping to see the loving girl I once knew, but all I saw was hatred. "Marissa, please, let's not do this now," I begged, my voice shaking with emotion. "Why not?" she snapped back. "This is my day, and I'll say whatever I want." Ron clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. "That's enough," he said firmly. "We're leaving." Marissa just smirked and turned away, leaving me to face the stares and whispers from the guests. As we walked out, I could feel their judgmental eyes on me, wondering what I'd done to make my own stepdaughter hate me so much. Tears streamed down my face, and I realized everything had changed. In the car, Ron held the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, his face filled with anger and sadness. "I don't understand what's wrong with her, Elise," he said, his voice strained. "But I won't let her hurt you like this." I just nodded, feeling overwhelmed as we drove away from what should have been a happy night, now ruined. I wondered what had happened to the sweet girl Marissa used to be and what this meant for our family. It's hard to say when Marissa started hating me. Maybe it was when I married her dad and became her stepmom. Or maybe it started even earlier, influenced by her mom, Clara. "Don't worry, honey," Clara had told Marissa, running her fingers through her hair. "No one can take your real mom's place." Even then, Clara's words made me feel uneasy, but I tried to ignore it. I wanted to build a good relationship with Marissa, my new stepdaughter. I'm not here to take anyone's place, I told Marissa gently. I just want us to be friends. She nodded, but her eyes showed no warmth or love. It felt like there was a barrier between us, fueled by her mom's hurtful words. At first, Marissa was polite, but distant. But as time went on, her true feelings came out. Why are you always trying to get involved in my life? She snapped one evening when I asked about her weekend plans. Ron gave Marissa a disapproving look. Marissa, don't talk to your mom like that. She's not my mom. Marissa yelled, her face full of anger. And I'm tired of her pretending she is. Then she stormed off, leaving me hurt by her harsh words. Ron could only shake his head, looking disappointed and resigned. After that, Marissa's dislike for me was obvious. She'd roll her eyes when I came into a room and make mean comments quietly. If I offered help, she'd reject it rudely, like she couldn't stand being around me. You're not fooling anyone with your fake kindness, she sneered one day when I asked if she wanted a ride to her friend's house. Marissa, stop it, Ron said, getting frustrated. But she didn't listen. It was clear Clara encouraged Marissa's hatred toward me. Whenever we saw her, she'd smile sweetly, like she was happy we didn't get along. I don't know what you've done to make my daughter hate you, she'd say with a fake smile, her eyes filled with mean intentions. But I guess you'll have to deal with the consequences. And deal with them I did. Marissa's hatred kept growing, like a wound that wouldn't heal, making our family life miserable every day. But I didn't realize then that her hurtful behavior was just the beginning of something much worse. Marissa became even more manipulative and mean after she quit college. Without a plan for her future, she seemed determined to cause trouble in our lives, using her anger to get money and create chaos in our family. Give me $5,000, or I'll tell everyone how terrible you've been as a stepmom, she said one day, trapping me in the kitchen. I was shocked. Marissa, why are you saying this? I've tried my best to be good to you. Forget it, she snapped. Just give me the money, and I'll leave you alone. I felt desperate as I realized how low she was willing to go. I don't have that much money right now. Then you better find it unless you want everyone to know how bad you are. After that, it happened often. Marissa kept asking for more money, and her threats got worse each time I said no. Ron was stuck in the middle, trying to make both of us happy and wondering why his daughter was acting like this. Please just give her what she wants, he pleaded with me one night after another big fight. I can't handle all this arguing. But I knew that giving in would only make things worse. So even as Marissa's threats got scarier, I stuck to my decision. You think you're so perfect with your job at the high school, she sneered. Just wait until everyone sees who you really are. Her words scared me. I could only imagine the terrible lies she might spread, ruining my reputation with my coworkers and the students I cared for. Through everything, Clara was always there, silently supporting her daughter's mean actions. You get what you give, Elise, she'd say when she visited, making me feel even worse. Maybe if you were a better stepmom, Marissa wouldn't act like this. Her words hurt so much, making me feel angry, betrayed, and lost. But in the middle of all this chaos, I started to feel determined. I couldn't just sit back and let Marissa and Clara keep hurting us. If Marissa wanted a fight, she'd get one. It was time to stand up for myself and my family. I needed to show everyone the truth about Marissa's cruelty, even if it meant doing things I never thought I could do. From then on, I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to keep my family safe, even if it meant doing things I never thought I'd have to do. As Marissa's wedding day got closer, she kept asking for more and treating me worse. It felt like she enjoyed making me suffer, testing how much I could take before I broke down. I need $3,000 more for my dress alterations, she said one evening, not even saying hello as she came into the living room. Ron looked at me, begging me to give in, but I couldn't take it anymore. No, Marissa, I've had enough. She acted surprised. What are you going to do, Elise? Cry to Daddy like you always do. I clenched my fists, feeling furious. You ungrateful child. Your dad and I have done everything for you, and this is how you treat us. Marissa laughed, making me even angrier. You're not fooling anyone. You're just a sad, insecure woman trying to buy your way into our family. Her words hurt, but before I could say anything, she said one more thing. You think the school wants someone like you? Marissa said, her voice dripping with malice. Just wait until they find out about your drinking problem. I felt sick to my stomach. Marissa was planning to ruin my career and reputation with lies. Marissa, stop it, Ron yelled, furious, but she just smirked, enjoying the mess she'd made. In that moment, something changed in me. I felt determined to stay strong against all the hurt and anger. I'm done being a victim, I said, my voice firm and steady. Leave and don't come back until you can act like a decent person. Marissa looked surprised by my defiance at first, but then she smirked and leaned in close. You'll regret this, she whispered, her breath hot on my face. With those words, she stormed out, leaving a tense silence behind her. Ron looked at me, seeming lost. I'm sorry, Elise. I don't know what's wrong with her, he said, rubbing his temples. But I knew, this wasn't sudden. It was years of Clara's influence. As I thought about Marissa's threats, I felt determined. She thought she could ruin my life with lies, but she was wrong. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one, and I wouldn't play by her rules. Marissa's threats kept replaying in my head, making me more determined to expose her true self before it was too late. I knew I couldn't rely on Ron for help. His love for his daughter made him blind to her cruelty. So I had to handle this on my own. That's when Derek came into the picture. He used to be Marissa's boyfriend before she changed. We ran into each other at the grocery store, and we started talking. Soon, everything started to make sense. She's not who you think she is, Derek told me, looking regretful. She lied to me about you and Ron. I felt really scared when he told me about all the bad things Marissa did. He said Marissa made up stories about me, saying I was trying to control their family and that Ron was mean to them. He believed her because she seemed so sure and angry. But he only realized she was lying after we broke up. As he talked, I started to see how sneaky Marissa really was. She made up lots of lies to make everyone think badly of me. Her mom, Clara, was the one behind it all. Like she was controlling everything behind the scenes. Derek told me that Marissa's mom has been poisoning Marissa's thoughts about you from the very beginning. I realized, feeling sick to my stomach. She's been putting all these twisted ideas in her head, like you were trying to replace her mom. Everything suddenly made sense. I had been the target of their mean plan all along, made out to be the bad person in their story. But Derek didn't stop there. He said Marissa's getting married for the wrong reasons. Not because she loves Kevin, but because she wants his money and status. Marissa doesn't really care about Kevin, Derek said with a laugh. She's just using him to get what she wants. Once she's got what she needs, she'll leave him and find someone else to use. His words shook me to my core. I had always had a feeling that Marissa didn't truly care, but hearing it so plainly was hard to take. After Derek left, my head was spinning with everything he'd said. I'd been letting Marissa and her mom control everything for too long. But now, armed with the truth, I knew I had to do something. It was time to stand up to them, to show everyone what was really going on. No more pretending to be the victim, no more being scared of their lies. I was ready to fight back. On the day of Marissa's wedding, the air was tense as I watched her get ready. But I was determined. This was the day I would reveal the truth. You look so pretty, my dear, Clara said sweetly, fixing Marissa's veil with a smile. Just like a princess on her big day. Marissa glowed with happiness, soaking up her mother's praise like a flower soaking up sunlight. But it made me feel uneasy. Yes, it's like a fairy tale, I remarked, unable to hold back, with a handsome prince and a mean stepmother. Clara's eyes narrowed, but Marissa just laughed, not seeming to understand or care about what I meant. Speaking of mean stepmothers, she said calmly, I'm surprised you came at all. After how you've been treating me, I thought you might skip the whole thing. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, believe me, I thought about it, but I couldn't miss this moment. Before Marissa could say anything, Ron popped his head into the room with a forced smile. Everything okay here? He asked. Just fine, Dad, Marissa replied sweetly. Elise and I were just chatting. Her tone dripped with sarcasm, but Ron ignored it. Well, it's almost time. You ready? Marissa nodded eagerly, ready to make her entrance. As the music started and the doors opened, I took a deep breath, getting ready for what I had to do. The ceremony went by quickly, with vows that felt empty and fake. But when it came time for Kevin and Marissa to kiss, I knew I had to speak up. Wait, I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet chapel. This wedding can't happen. Everyone gasped and looked at me. Marissa's face turned red with anger, her fists clenched. What's going on? She spat, furious. I took a deep breath and stared at Marissa firmly. Marissa, what this means is that I can't stay quiet anymore while you keep lying and manipulating everyone around you. Clara looked pale, realizing what was happening, but I continued before she could interrupt. I showed them all the proof Derek had given me, texts, emails, recordings, that showed Marissa's lies. For years, you've been spreading lies and turning people against me, pretending to be the innocent one, I said firmly. But not anymore. It's time for the truth. I showed everyone the evidence, explaining how Marissa had been deceitful and selfish. The chapel fell silent. Marissa's calm facade cracked, and she looked furious and shocked. You're lying, she yelled, reaching out towards me. How dare you ruin my special day? But it was too late. The truth was out for everyone to see. As Kevin's family reacted with shock and dismay, it was clear that Marissa's deceit was unraveling before everyone's eyes. She stood exposed, no longer able to maintain her facade. Despite her past actions, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and satisfaction seeing her downfall. The truth had been revealed, and I had won not through trickery, but by exposing the darkness hidden beneath Marissa's lies. The aftermath was chaotic, like a bomb had gone off in the room. The silence was quickly replaced by shouts and gasps as people reacted to the truth. How could you, Marissa? Someone yelled, their anger palpable. This was supposed to be my special day. Your special day was built on lies, I retorted firmly. You can't deceive people forever. Marissa looked ready to argue, but Kevin stepped forward, his eyes filled with hurt and disbelief. Is it true? He asked, his voice trembling. Were you just using me? For a moment, there was silence as everyone waited for Marissa's response. I almost felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Almost, but then she put on that fake smile and I saw the cold, calculating look in her eyes. No, of course not, darling, she said, reaching out to touch Kevin's face. You know I love you so much. Elise is just trying to cause trouble like she always does. I clenched my fists, trying to control my anger. Didn't she realize that her lies were exposed? Apparently not, as she turned her angry gaze back to me. This is all your fault, she snapped, pointing accusingly at me. If you hadn't interfered, none of this would be happening. Stop, Ron's voice boomed, cutting through the tension. We all turned to see him, his face red with anger and embarrassment. I can't believe what I'm hearing, he said, shaking his head. My own daughter lying and manipulating everyone for her own selfish reasons. Marissa was silent, unable to respond. For once, she seemed speechless in the face of her father's disappointment. I don't even recognize you anymore, Ron said, his voice heavy with sadness. The girl I raised, the one who was kind and loving. She's gone, isn't she? A heavy silence filled the room as we all absorbed the weight of Ron's words. It wasn't just Marissa who felt the impact, but Clara too. They exchanged a tense look, a silent struggle passing between them. Finally, Clara broke the silence. Well? She demanded, her eyes fixed on her daughter. Aren't you going to speak up, defend yourself? But Marissa stayed silent, defeated. She looked smaller than ever, a mere shadow of the manipulative person she had become. Clara snorted in disgust, then stormed out, leaving a shocked silence behind her. Kevin's family followed, their faces showing everything from pity to disgust. And just like that, it was all over. Marissa's big plan had fallen apart, leaving her dreams shattered. As Kevin left, looking devastated, I felt sorry for him. He was just another victim of Marissa's games, but any sympathy I had was quickly replaced by a sense of satisfaction. The truth was out, and Marissa had brought it all on herself. There would be no more lies or manipulation, only the consequences of her actions. In the days after the failed wedding, chaos erupted as news of Marissa's lies spread rapidly. She found herself shunned by the very community she'd once hoped to impress. I'll never forget the sight of her at her mother's door, begging for help after her plans fell apart. Please, Mom, she cried, tears in her eyes. I need your help. I have nowhere else to go. But Clara looked at her with a mix of disgust and pity. Help you, she scoffed. After what you've done? After embarrassing our family? Marissa flinched as if she had been slapped. But you're my mom. You're supposed to support me, no matter what. Support you? Clara shook her head sadly. You don't understand, do you? There's no support left. You've pushed away everyone who cared about you with your selfishness and lies." Her words hit Marissa hard, like a punch to the gut. I could see the realization dawn on her face, the weight of her loneliness settling in. You don't mean that," Marissa whispered, her hand shaking as she reached out. But Clara stepped away, her face now cold and distant. "I don't recognize you anymore," she said firmly. "The daughter I knew wouldn't have done what you did. You made your choices, Marissa. Now you have to face the consequences." With those final words, Clara turned and walked back inside, leaving Marissa alone on the doorstep, utterly broken. In the weeks that followed, I saw Marissa's once proud demeanor crumble under the weight of her own actions. The places she used to frequent, fancy bars and high-end stores, now treated her with scorn, whispers following her wherever she went. Even her friends deserted her, not wanting to be linked with her disgrace. Through it all, Ron and I stayed strong, our bond growing stronger as Marissa's world fell apart. "I'm sorry it had to end like this," Ron said quietly one evening as we watched Marissa walk by, looking defeated. "But you were right. She did this to herself." I didn't say anything, just squeezed his hand gently. Words felt insufficient in the face of such a painful situation. As things settled down and our community began to recover from Marissa's lies, Ron and I received an outpouring of support and gratitude. The families we had helped, the students I had taught, they all came together to thank us for standing up against the manipulation and lies that had threatened to tear us apart. In those moments of connection, witnessing human kindness and resilience, I found a newfound peace and purpose that I had been missing during Marissa's tumultuous reign. She tried to tear me down, but it was her own selfishness that led to her downfall, revealing the emptiness beneath her facade. Ram and I would move forward, stronger from the experience. If our story could encourage others to stand against manipulation and embrace honesty, then perhaps something positive could come from Marissa's downfall.
Didn't I mention I was going golfing with my boss today? Geez, don't bother me for things like that, I exclaimed frantically when I called my husband. The response I received was cold and distant. Just moments before, I had received news of our daughter's involvement in a car accident. She was reportedly taken to the hospital, and despite the urgency of the situation, my husband, who was out golfing, showed no signs of concern. "What are you talking about? She's your daughter too," I exclaimed, but his demeanor remained unchanged. "I don't care. Golfing with my boss is more important than she is," he replied. "My name is Catherine, a 42-year-old homemaker living with my husband, Bob, and our daughter. Bob, 3 years my senior, works for a major company downtown. We met at a party thrown by a mutual friend, and his dedication to his job as a business person attracted me. When Bob asked me out, I was over the moon, and his proposal day felt like floating on cloud 9. After getting married, I quit my job to focus on household chores, enjoying our newly life. A year later, we were blessed with a daughter named Emily. Raising her wasn't easy, but my mother-in-law, who had lost her husband and lived alone, was always there to help, a blessing indeed. Emily is now in her sophomore year of high school, studying hard, active in school activities, and enjoying her teenage life with friends. However, a noticeable change occurred in our harmonious family life about 6 months ago. It started after a long weekend when Bob planned a trip with his colleagues. Emily and I spent the holiday just the two of us. On the last day of the holidays, Bob returned and we had dinner together as a family for the first time in a few days. During dinner, Emily nervously approached the topic of her plans after high school. She had consulted with me while Bob was away and had already decided to go to college, which I supported. However, contrary to expectations, Bob grimaced and replied dismissively, "Why should I care? Do whatever you want." Taken aback by his cold response, I unintentionally let out a gasp. Bob immediately left the table without clearing his plate, stomping off to his room as if in a bad mood. Left behind, Emily and I were puzzled by Bob's unusually distant behavior. "I wonder what got into Dad. Did I say something wrong?" Emily asked. "He's probably just tired from the trip. We'll discuss your plans another time," I tried to console her. Although Emily seemed uneasy, she accepted my explanation. However, the following day, Bob's cold attitude persisted. From that point onward, he blatantly ignored Emily, refusing to engage in any conversation with her and consistently acting indifferent. Moreover, he started spending more time away on weekends, causing a significant decrease in the time we spent together as a family. Discussing Emily's future became an impossible task given the strained atmosphere. Feeling consistently ignored and without understanding why, Emily began to resent her father. Even my attempts to mediate proved futile, and their relationship worsened. Concerned about the situation, I consulted with my mother-in-law, who had a good relationship with Bob. She even tried to scold him, but it only made Bob angrier, leading him to snap and retort with a dismissive, "Mind your own business." To make matters worse, he blamed me for discussing the issue with my mother-in-law. On the night she came over after Emily locked herself in her room, Bob yelled at me, accusing, "Why did you talk to my mom?" "Don't meddle. It's because you've been cold to Emily, isn't it? Why are you ignoring her now? You used to dote on her so much." When I mustered the courage to ask why, Bob just glared at me with annoyance and didn't provide an answer. No matter how hard I tried to mediate between the two of them, Bob's attitude remained unchanged. Time went by without knowing the reason for his sudden change, but considering the shift in behavior after his return from a long weekend trip, it's reasonable to assume that something happened during that time. Perhaps someone filled his head with nonsense. Unable to figure it out on my own, I decided to talk to my mother-in-law and investigate the reason for Bob's change. Then, one Sunday, both Bob and Emily were out since the morning. As I carried on with my usual housework at home, I received a call on the landline just before noon. It was an unknown number, and with suspicion, I picked up. To my surprise, the caller claimed to be from the police. "Are you related to Emily?" the officer asked. "Yes, I'm her mother." "Oh my God, did something happen to her?" I inquired with a sinking feeling. The officer's response was unexpected. "Actually, the bus Emily was on got into a traffic accident," he explained, leaving me momentarily speechless. I felt a wave of dizziness, and my hands, holding the phone, started to shake. Emily had informed me she was going to the mall with friends, and apparently she was on the bus at the time of the accident. According to the officer, a car from the opposite lane crashed into the bus, and Emily and her friend were taken to a city hospital. After hearing the details of the accident and hanging up, I was in shock and couldn't move for a while. However, I knew I had to inform Bob quickly. I rushed to call him on my cell, and after more than 20 seconds of ringing, Bob answered, grumbling, "What is it?" Ignoring his tone, I frantically conveyed what had happened to Emily. "Bob, this is serious. I just got a call from the police. The bus Emily was on got into an accident, and she's apparently been taken to the hospital," I explained, tears streaming down my face. But ignoring my panic, Bob coldly responded, "So what? What do you want me to do about it?" Seeing no signs of him being disturbed and feeling as if he couldn't care less, I got even more frustrated. "What are you saying?" "Please head to the hospital now." "I'm going to." Before I could tell him the name of the hospital, Bob cut me off, saying, Didn't I tell you I have a golf outing with my boss today? I'm staying overnight and coming back tomorrow morning. Can't help it." True, he had mentioned a golf outing a few days ago, but I was shocked by Bob's lack of concern about our daughter's accident. "How can you even say that, Bob? Emily is your daughter," I pleaded. Bob replied, "I don't care. Golf with my boss is more important than her. You go to the hospital on your own," before hanging up abruptly. I tried calling back immediately, but it seemed he turned off his phone. I sent a text, but given his attitude, I doubted he would reply. Even though they had been distant, Emily is his flesh and blood. How could he be so heartless? This incident completely shattered my trust in Bob, and I was certain I couldn't continue living with him. I decided on divorce, but heading to the hospital was my top priority. So, I hurriedly left home. As he had declared, Bob didn't come home that day, staying at a hotel alone because the golf course was too far away. He even took the next day off work. When Bob came home the next morning, he was surprisingly cheerful. It was hard to believe for a father whose daughter had an accident the previous day. "Hey, what happened to Emily? Is she hospitalized?" Though Bob asked about Emily's condition, his casual tone made it clear he wasn't genuinely concerned. I sat in the living room, and when Bob noticed my downcast expression, he asked about Emily. Looking up at the sky, I replied, "She's there." For some reason, Bob seemed pleased, saying, "I see. Well, that's a relief. Once Emily's funeral is over, we can get divorced right away." With that, he pulled out a piece of paper, an invoice from a lawyer specializing in divorce procedures, and thrust it in front of me. It served as both a contract for lawyer consultation and already had his signature on it. Though Bob appeared quite prepared, having already decided to divorce him, it might have saved me some hassle. "All right, I got it." I quietly agreed to the divorce. Bob didn't discuss the reason for the divorce. He just walked away to his room without saying anything else, as if he was done with me. The Bob who once cherished Emily and valued our family was gone. It was a harsh realization, but I didn't feel sad, only an increasing resentment towards him. I then called my mother-in-law and informed her about Bob's return and the lawyer's contact. Within an hour, my mother-in-law arrived at our house, and Bob returned to the living room. As soon as my mother-in-law saw Bob, she approached him with tears in her eyes, questioning, "Bob, what were you doing when your family needed you the most? I never thought you'd be this cold-hearted." Even when scolded by his mother, Bob showed no remorse, stating, "I had prior commitments. What can I do?" And it was all her making a big fuss. Looking at me with a mocking attitude, he continued, "I've been dying to get divorced. With Emily gone, I feel so relieved. Now I can leave without any regrets." Unable to tolerate it any longer, I shouted, thrusting a few pictures at Bob. The pictures depicted a man and a woman intimately together. The moment he saw them, Bob's face turned pale. The man in the pictures was unmistakably Bob. Stammering, he asked, "Where did you get these pictures?" I calmly replied, "They were taken yesterday afternoon. Weren't you supposed to be at a business golf outing? Instead, you were with a young woman. What were you up to?" Confronted, Bob averted his eyes with a frustrated look and began making excuses like, "She's just a colleague from work. We just went golfing together." I sighed in disbelief, remarking, "Golfing in such fancy clothes? I don't think so." "I already know you're cheating, so save your breath." The word cheating made Bob's face stiffen. His inability to deny it immediately was telling. But this wasn't the first time I learned of Bob's affair. Recently, he often left the house without telling me where he was going. After discussing with my mother-in-law and obtaining financial help, I had hired a private investigator. The investigation revealed that whenever he went out, he met the woman in the photos, exposing his affair. His so-called business golf was a complete lie, and he probably stayed at a hotel with his lover. I had more evidence of his affair. I even have a video of you and that woman coming out of a hotel. "Don't think you can get out of it," I declared. When I said that, Bob looked pleadingly at his mother, but she already knew of his infidelity and firmly shook her head in disapproval. To cheat and not even visit Emily in the hospital, and then to selfishly rejoice, thinking she's dead. "I don't know how you'll face your father," my mother-in-law said with a mix of anger and sorrow. Bob froze in shock, his mouth agape. "Wait, Isn't Emily dead?" he stammered. I explained to a bewildered Bob, "Don't jinx it. You misunderstood. She's very much alive. The injuries from the accident were just minor scratches. Emily was taken to the hospital yesterday, but she was fine and had no major injuries. The accident wasn't severe, so she came home the same day." Bob misunderstood my comment, looking up to the sky. "She's there," and assumed Emily had passed away. "Emily is on her school trip as planned. She'll be landing soon," I continued. "A school trip." Bob was taken aback, his eyes wide. Bob, who didn't care about his daughter, had completely forgotten about Emily's school trip. The trip started today and was for 3 nights and 4 days. Emily had gone shopping for it yesterday, and the doctor had said that there wouldn't be any issues with Emily going on the school trip, so she left as scheduled this morning. When I told Bob that Emily was up in the sky, probably boarding the plane, I used those words to indirectly blame him for not worrying about our daughter. Oh, that's what happened. Well, I'm glad Emmeline is okay. I hope she enjoys her trip, Bob said nonchalantly. How can you say that now? You knew how much she'd been looking forward to this trip since sophomore year. But I guess you'd be just as happy if she had an accident. You probably forgot all about it. I sternly rebuked Bob, who tried to feign laughter. I didn't have a shred of affection left for him. No matter what he says in the future, I'm never going to trust Bob again. Just then, an email notification popped up on Bob's smartphone. After reading the message, Bob's body began to tremble with anger. Shoving the screen in my face, he shouted, "Hey, what the hell is this?" I looked at the screen with my mother-in-law, and it was from Emily with a concise message. I can't consider someone who prioritizes his affair over his family as my father. I'm cutting ties with you. It was as if she was sending a message to a stranger. It seemed that Emily learned yesterday about Bob's lie about playing golf when he was actually meeting his mistress. She probably sent the email after landing. Being bluntly disowned by his 17-year-old daughter, Bob's face, which was pale just moments ago, turned a deep shade of red from shame and anger. He glared at me and began yelling, "This is all your fault. Weren't you the one who cheated first?" I was completely lost. "What are you talking about? When did I ever cheat?" I protested. "Jessica told me," Bob said. "Jessica? Who's that?" Then it hit me. The detective agency found out that Bob's mistress was named Jessica Accord. According to Bob, Jessica had filled his head with baseless lies about me when they first started their affair. She told him that I had cheated on him and that Emily was fathered by someone else. The detective agency confirmed that he began his affair 6 months ago, right when the relationship between Bob and Emily started to sour. Since Jessica works at the same company as Bob, they likely started their affair during the long weekend. Jessica had been spreading outrageous lies, saying I had cheated and had Bob raise Emily, a child fathered by another man. But Emily doesn't look or act anything like me. It's natural for me to have doubts. Both my mother-in-law and I were rendered speechless at Bob's outburst. Thinking Emily wasn't his because of Jessica's lie, he began to resent her and treated her coldly. But he didn't want to divorce because he didn't want to pay child support. However, mistaking Emily's accident for her death yesterday, he was relieved, thinking he could divorce without any complications. "You've got to be kidding me! So you believed a lie your mistress cooked up over your own family?" I shouted angrily. Bob responded with a dismissive laugh. "I don't care whether it's true or not. I'm going to divorce you and be with Jessica." Before I could retort, my mother-in-law stepped in with a stoic face. She sighed deeply as she locked eyes with Bob. I realized she was livid. "I wonder where I went wrong raising you. I'm so ashamed. Did you forget that Emily looked just like you when she was a baby? She's definitely your child," she said. "I told you, I don't care about that anymore," Bob retorted defiantly. Right then, someone knocked at the front door. I went to answer and brought the guest to the living room. Bob looked puzzled. The visitor was a man in a suit around our age. Bob rudely asked, "Who the hell are you? Are you her lover or something?" Unfazed, the man handed Bob his business card with a smile. Bob accepted the business card with disbelief. But the next moment, his eyes widened in surprise as he read, "Lawyer." Yes, he was the lawyer I had hired with the help of my mother-in-law. I had consulted him about Bob around the same time I had the detective agency investigate. I had asked him to come over yesterday, anticipating that Bob would do something rash given the situation with Emily. I suspected it had to do with Emily, and I had a feeling Bob might have done something unthinkable. I instructed Bob, "Call your mistress over right now." Bob started panicking and asked, why would Jessica be involved at this point? The lawyer chimed in, It's quite unreasonable to say she's not involved. Call her now. Bob had no comeback to that, realizing he had no way out. Reluctantly, he contacted his mistress. About 30 minutes later, a young woman arrived at the house. Jessica, in her 20s, probably took a personal day off from work just like Bob. She approached us with a disgruntled look, saying, "What's this all about? I've got nothing to do with your family issues." Despite Jessica's refusal, I informed her that I was divorcing Bob and that even if she stayed with him, he'd have to pay child support to Emily, who was about to go to college. "I have nothing to do with this," she insisted. However, the lawyer promptly responded, "We have plenty of evidence of the affair. Plus, you fed Bob some nasty lies which resulted in irreparable damage to Catherine and her family. That's defamation, and we could sue you for it." By the time the lawyer finished explaining, both Bob and Jessica had turned pale, realizing they were out of options. Not wanting a court battle, Bob agreed to pay child support properly. We went through a divorce, and later on, I heard that Bob's company found out he had been using his boss as a cover for his affairs. The whole company was appalled by the way he handled the situation, especially when they found out he pretended to be happy about his daughter's fake death. Exposing his true nature led him to resign from his position. Finding a new job proved difficult as word of Bob's misconduct spread within the industry. Although he managed to find part-time jobs, his pride got in the way, leading to constant issues with colleagues, and he quit frequently. The savings set aside for Emily's future had already been spent on his affair with Jessica. Soon after our divorce, the two broke up, and Jessica apparently quit her job too. But now that's none of my concern. Struggling, Bob turned to his mother for help but was denied. He even tried to cozy up to me and Emily, saying, "Please, I was wrong. Let's start over, the three of us." Of course, we rejected him, blocked his contacts, and moved to a new place with the help of his mother. Now his mother lives near us, and we continue to maintain a close relationship. I have no idea what became of Bob, and I never want to be involved with him again. Freed from the stress of the troubled relationship with his father, Emily has been thriving in high school. Now, as a senior, she got accepted into her first-choice college. "Congratulations, Emily. You did an amazing job," I said. "Thanks, Mom. It's all because you and Grandma supported me," Emily responded, tears streaming down her face. "Since the college is commutable from our home, we plan to live together as we always have." I managed to find a job shortly after becoming a single parent and now work full-time. We have enough savings to cover Emily's tuition. I'm hoping for a bright future as we move forward, living happily with our family.
Hello, I'm Lucy, a 58-year-old woman who recently gained custody of my grandson, Matt. Today, I feel ready to share the challenging events that led to this point, hoping that discussing it here will boost my confidence to open up in real-life conversations. Let me start by introducing my daughter, Melanie. She's my only child and the apple of my eye. When she was just 3 years old, her father, my husband, passed away, leaving the two of us to navigate life together. Melanie was a bright and brilliant girl, and I cherished her strong work ethic, which eventually earned her a full ride to her dream college. In college, Melanie met Nain, and they married shortly after graduation. While I wasn't thrilled about the swift marriage, I kept my opinions to myself, simply wanting Melanie to experience the world independently. She received my advice to delay having children, focusing on her career. However, 2 years later, she became pregnant with my grandson, Matt. Although not entirely pleased with the timing, I couldn't deny a sense of excitement about becoming a grandmother. When Matt was born, it brought immense joy, and I couldn't wait to spoil him. Fast forward 2 years, and Melanie and Nain moved to another state for a better job opportunity. Despite my reluctance to be separated from my grandson, I understood their motives and learned to cope with their absence through Skype and regular calls. 8 years later, they returned, and I was ecstatic to welcome them back. During their absence, I communicated with them virtually, and when they returned, they delved into work, leaving Matt in my care for long hours. Despite my uncertainty about their work commitments, I cherished the time spent with Matt, and our bond grew stronger. Unfortunately, the situation began to unravel around Matt's 12th birthday. I always took part in grand celebrations for him, but that year, I couldn't attend due to a work trip. Despite my efforts to return on his birthday morning, I couldn't make it. In an attempt to make up for missing his significant day, I met with him the following day, saying, "Hey, sweetie, happy belated birthday." "Thanks, Grandma," he replied. "I'm so sorry I couldn't make it yesterday. I tried my best to make it back in time, but it was already 11 o'clock p.m. "It's okay. You made it up to me anyway." How could I not celebrate my favorite grandson's birthday? "I'm your only grandson, Grandma." Okay, you're still my favorite though. Anyways, 12 is a big age. "What did you do yesterday?" "Nothing." "Oh, come on, Matt. If you're trying to protect my feelings from missing out on your birthday, I can assure you that I'll be fine." "No, Grandma, I really didn't do anything." "What do you mean? Didn't your parents take you out for dinner?" "I sent your mom money for that." "Well, I sat at home all alone throughout the day, except for when my friends came over for a bit. Mom and Dad came back home really late from work, so I didn't do anything." "Why were your parents working on a Saturday?" "Mom and Dad picked up extra hours because they apparently needed the money." "That's odd. The least your mom could have done was tell me that they weren't celebrating your birthday. I would have had even more money to spend on you." "Grandma, that's really sweet, but I'm already used to this." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Mom and Dad are almost never home, and they always miss big events because they're too busy working." "That's so sad. How do you feel, though?" "I was sad yesterday, but I don't think I should have been." "Why?" "I mean, it's only natural to feel bad when your parents forget about celebrating your birthday. I mean, they've been doing it for so long. I should not have thought that they would have remembered." "Sweetie, that's so incredibly sad. I'm going to talk to your parents about it. You don't deserve this." "No, please don't. They'll only get mad at me, and they might not let me see you again." "But please, Grandma." "Fine, but you're staying with me tonight, and we're celebrating your birthday properly." I tried my best to push aside what Matt had revealed to me for the duration of his celebration with me. I took him out, let him buy whatever he wanted, and he seemed very happy. I was glad I could lift his mood. The next day after Matt left, I phoned Melanie to inquire why neither she nor Nain had celebrated Matt's birthday. Melanie simply explained they were busy, which infuriated me. Besides being my grandson, Matt was just a child, and no child should be forgotten in such a manner. I conveyed my concern to Melanie, but she dismissed me, telling me to mind my own business and not lecture her on parenting. Fearing she might cut off my access to Matt, I bit my tongue. About a month after Matt's 12th birthday, I received a distressing call from him while at work. "Grandma, Matt, sweetie, how's everything going?" "Grandma, I need help." "What? Why? What's going on?" "I feel really sick." "Oh, sweetie, where are your parents?" "I've been trying to tell them I haven't been feeling well for a long time now, and they haven't been listening. They keep telling me that I'm fine and that they're too busy to do anything about it." "On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain?" 10. "Whoa, where is this pain you're feeling?" "Near my tummy, Grandma." "Could you please stand here fast?" "I don't think I'll be able to stay awake for too long." "I'm already on my way, sweetie. Just keep talking to me." "How long have you been feeling this way?" "I've been feeling this way for a week and a half now, and it's always been this bad." "Why wouldn't your parents take you to the doctor? That's not right of them." "I don't know. I tried to tell them. I even went to them and cried about it, but they just brushed me off." "I'm going to have a stern talk with them. In the meantime, I'm only 10 minutes away, sweetie. I'll be there super soon." "Are you lying down?" "I'm sitting at my desk." "Could you get on the bed and try to lie down? Maybe that will ease the pain a little." "Oh, okay. Well, I'll try." "Grandma, everything's getting so blurry." "Matt, stay with me, sweetie." In a panic, I rushed over to Matt's place. While en route, I called 911 to get him help as quickly as possible. Fortunately, My workplace was only a 7-minute drive from Melanie's. I arrived before the EMTs, and upon entering Matt's room, I found him lying on the floor, his face turning blue. When I touched him to check for a pulse, he felt incredibly cold. Thankfully, I felt a pulse, and shortly after my arrival, the EMTs arrived, loading him into an ambulance and rushing him to the nearest hospital. I persistently tried calling Melanie and Nathan, but neither of them responded. Left with no choice, I resorted to leaving voicemails and messages, urgently informing them of Matt's situation. As I imagined worst-case scenarios, Matt's doctor delivered the alarming news that he had a ruptured appendix and required immediate surgery. Anxiety consumed me as Matt was rushed into the emergency room, and I anxiously paced back and forth, struggling to reach Melanie and Nathan. My frustration toward them intensified with every unanswered attempt. Thankfully, Matt's surgery proceeded smoothly, and he regained consciousness shortly after being placed in his own ward. About an hour later, Melanie and Nathan finally arrived. "Oh my God, Matt. What happened?" "Apparently, my appendix ruptured and I needed immediate surgery." "How did this happen so suddenly?" "Suddenly? Matt has been complaining about this pain for over 10 days. But how were we supposed to know it was this serious?" "Are you being serious right now? As Matt's parents, both of you should attend to every pain and illness he has, regardless of how tiny or insignificant it seems. I don't appreciate you talking to my husband that way. I wouldn't have to talk to either of you like this if you just took care of your son." "Are you accusing us of being bad parents?" "Yes, I think I've made it pretty clear. This was your only mistake, a mistake that could have cost Matt his life if he hadn't called me. Not to mention, both of you prioritize your work over Matt all the time. We do not. Tell me that when I've been picking him up at least 3 times a week from school because both of you forgot. We're working hard to provide for him. Sure, we forget to do certain things every once in a while, but that doesn't make us bad parents. You think Matt is going to care about all the money you got him 5 years down the lane? No, all he's going to remember is how you neglected him and how your neglect almost got him killed. You are overstepping so many lines. That's it. You may be Matt's grandma, but you have no say in how he's brought up or what we, as parents, do. I want you out of his ward." "But Mom, I want Grandma here. She brought me here. So I think she deserves to be here. Matt, stay out of it. Once you're nice and healed, you are going to be in trouble." "Why will he be in trouble? He could have called us and told us about his pain. Instead of coming to us, he went to you, and now we're beyond humiliated and embarrassed. You can't take your feelings out on him. He's been suffering, and he reached out to the only person he knew would take his pain seriously." "Okay, Lucy, you really need to step out now, or we will have to get you thrown out. He can't do that. As his parents, we will be given first priority. I just have to tell the nurse to take you out of here." "Fine, but this isn't over. Matt, sweetie, take care. Everything will be fine, and you have absolutely nothing to worry about. I'll see you soon." I was beyond enraged, but once again, I decided to hold my tongue because I knew that I couldn't just abandon Matt when he most definitely needed me the most. I tried my best to get in contact with Melanie and Nathan to get updates on Matt, but neither of them answered any of my calls or texts. I could only hope that Matt was recovering nicely. That was until just a week after his surgery. Melanie called me and asked me to look after Matt during the daytime after work until they came back home. She never addressed our last conversation, nor did she apologize for how she talked to me. I let it go because I was just happy to see Matt again. The next day, I rushed over to Matt right after work and saw him lying in bed playing a video game. "There's my brave and strong man. How are you doing, champ?" I could be better, I guess. Have Mom and Dad been taking proper care of you?" "Well, they left me alone all day. So what? I thought at least one of them would have taken off to look after you. It was truly a miracle that even one of them stayed with me when I was in the hospital." "Oh my God, you poor child. I want out of this house, Grandma. Is there anything you can do about it?" "Of course. I mean, I'm your grandma, and your parents have neglected you enough for me to use my rights as your grandma to take custody of you. But I don't think that your parents will be too happy about it. Who cares what they think? They clearly don't care enough about me. I completely agree. You'll be a little busy though, and you'll probably have to go to court, and it'll be really tiring. I'll do anything to get out of this house. If I could survive my appendix bursting, I think I can handle being tired for a while. Wow. Just how much damage have your parents done? You know, one time they forgot me in another state because they got too wrapped up with their own things. Another state? Yeah, one time they surprised me with a road trip, which only turned out to be a business trip for both of them. I spent the entire time in the hotel while both of them worked. One day after their meeting was over, they simply left, completely forgetting I was even there. I had to spend a whole night at the police station, waiting for them to come back. When the police spoke to my dad, he told them he was overtired, and it was an honest mistake, so they let him go. I got yelled at afterward for not calling them. Did the police say anything to them? They spoke to my dad, and he told them he was overtired, and that it was an honest mistake, and they let him go. I got yelled at afterward for not calling them. My God, they're monsters. Do you see why I want out so bad? Absolutely, honey. Let's give you another day or two to feel better, and then I'll bring a lawyer over, and we can start discussing getting custody of you. Thank you, Grandma. I didn't think I could get any more appalled by Melanie and Nathan's parenting, but there I was, listening to just a few snippets, and I already wanted to unleash hell on them. I knew that it would not be right to get my emotions involved in this situation, so I just spent the rest of that day talking with Matt and trying to make him feel better. The next day, I took a week off work, and the first thing I did was get in contact with a lawyer. He advised me to collect as much evidence as I could about Melanie and Nathan's neglect, so I started to do that. Over the next 4 months, I got Matt on board and asked him to keep track of everything. We set up a hidden camera in his room so that every conversation was recorded. Gradually, we collected more than enough evidence, along with evidence from the past and testimonies from those involved. We had more than enough evidence to guarantee my custody of Matt. With that, I filed for Matt's custody, and Melanie and Nain were summoned to court. Of course, they did not take it lightly, and I got a very angry call from Melanie. "What do you think you're doing?" "Oh, hi, Melanie. Do not try to be nice to me right now while you're trying to take Matt away from us. You have shown me one too many times how you neglect Matt. I don't want him growing up thinking that he's never cared for. That was one isolated incident, Mom. I've been speaking to a lawyer and to Matt. Matt has told me about all the other non-life-threatening ways you and Nain have been neglecting him. So you've brainwashed Matt into thinking that we don't love him either. I didn't force him to leave. I believe he wanted to go a long time ago, but he didn't realize he could. How can you even say that? This is all you're doing. You had to throw a huge fit in front of him at the hospital, Melanie. I don't think you realize just how scary it was to walk into your home and see Matt lying unconscious and blue on the floor. It took everything in me to remain calm and get him the help he needed. Your nonchalance about everything that happened to him is only making me angrier. We are not being nonchalant. You haven't even been paying attention to him after he had his surgery. Neither of you even took some time off to look after him. He's been home alone most of the time. Oh, shut up, Mom. We invited you over. He was not alone. I only see him after I'm done with work, which is around the afternoon. You and Nain leave early in the morning and don't even get back until late evening. He's alone for a good portion of the day, and as far as I'm concerned, that's major neglect. How do you expect us to pay off the surgery? Huh? That was only more stress on us. Are you trying to blame Matt for something he had no control over? If the shoe fits, you know what will alleviate you of all this financial stress? If you let me take care of Matt, he's my son. Your son that you do not care for. You can either make this easy or I will drag everything you've ever done to Matt into the public. Are you threatening me? If the shoe fits, now I have to go meet with my lawyer. You have 3 days to give me an answer. Bye. I actually did plan to provide evidence of all Melanie and Nathan's neglect to our family. Nathan's family, along with their workplaces, because I saw no reason for people like them to have children. It was only a miracle that they lived close to me. so I had some form of knowledge of what was happening on the inside. Matt was upset that his parents just did not see why they were wrong, but I stood by his side and assured him that the way his parents fought was not influenced by him or any of his actions. 3 days later, Melanie and Nathan willingly gave up their custody of Matt to me. Let me tell you, I have never in my life seen someone as happy as Matt was when he found out that his parents were signing over their custody of him. Matt cried for a good 5 minutes in pure happiness. Seeing him that happy only made my heart break even more for him at the thought of what the poor child must have gone through for years before someone even listened to him. Of course, Melanie and Nain were not very nice about handing over their custody of Matt to me after the deed was done. At first, they were low-key about it, but then the family began to get suspicious of Matt never being with them. They eventually came clean about their loss of custody of Matt, but not before blaming me for ruining their family. I received numerous calls from people condemning me as a horrible person for separating a child from their parents. Despite the criticism, I chose to ignore it because Matt was my top priority. Creating a safe environment for him took precedence over dealing with those who merely sought gossip. I weathered the harsh judgments from my family, ensuring that Matt remained oblivious to the negativity. However, things took a darker turn when Melanie and Nathan started spreading the false narrative that Matt had convinced me to strip them of custody. Matt now had his own phone and number, and he began receiving texts from concerned family members questioning why he was allegedly breaking his parents' hearts. This was when my anger reached a boiling point. While I could tolerate the accusations against me, dragging their son's name through the mud was unacceptable. I decided to take action by creating a group chat for the family members who had been harassing us. In the chat, I shared a folder filled with evidence of Melanie and Nathan's neglect of Matt. After sharing the evidence, I exited the group chat and blocked everyone involved on both Matt's and my phones. Subsequently, I heard from some family members that the shared evidence had triggered a significant backlash against Melanie and Nathan. They were ostracized by the entire family, and even their employers were informed of their actions, leading to job-related consequences. While I could empathize with their situation, I couldn't overlook their cruelty and inhumanity. I chose to distance myself from any information regarding them, not just for Matt's sake, but also for my own mental well-being. Each mention of them increased my anger and blood pressure. On a brighter note, Matt has never been happier. He has returned to excelling at school, and the joy in his life is evident as he frequently invites friends over. Humorously, I just about missing the quieter house before Matt moved in, but in truth, the child deserves all the laughter and smiles after everything he has been through. I am committed to protecting and providing for him, and I am confident that he has a much better handle on his life and himself, alleviating many of my worries. Thank you for taking the time to read our story.
"You're terrible at cooking, James. Go freeze outside with your failed meal," she yelled, slamming the window shut and locking it. I hurried to the window, pleading for James to open it as I pounded on the glass. But he just smirked and closed the curtains. The cold started to creep in, and I began to shake. My body, warm just moments ago from the heater, was quickly losing its heat. What will happen if it stays this cold? Even my baby inside me. I was about to faint from the freezing cold when someone suddenly reached out to help. "Are you okay?" The next day, I came back home with him. James was outside, freezing naked. I was stunned at the sight, but Lamb stepped forward. "Isn't that what you said? If you can't cook properly, then freeze outside." Liam gave James a stern look and spoke in a cold tone. James, shivering in the yard, could barely muster a response. "I'll call for an ambulance out of kindness. Emily, do you have anything to say to him before it arrives?" I nodded and stepped closer to James. "My name is Emily Smith. I'm 28 years old and stay at home. When I was working, my mom got sick and passed away. Then my dad suddenly died from a heart problem. I was left all alone since I'm the only child. It was really hard being by myself, but I kept busy with work. Emily, are you okay? You seem stressed." During that tough time, my husband James was there for me. He comforted me when I felt sad and alone. Eventually, we fell in love and got married after dating for a few years. We're so happy to have such a wonderful woman in our family, my in-laws said. James, you've brought home a great lady. After our wedding, I moved in with James' family, and we all got along great. Emily, I saw a new cafe near the train station on TV. Let's check it out sometime, James suggested. Sure, I'd love to. I especially bonded with my mother-in-law, and we made it a tradition to go out for a meal once a week. I also connected well with my father-in-law, who enjoys cooking, and we've cooked together in the kitchen a few times. I'm happy you're getting along with my family, but what about my younger brother? He can be a bit of a handful, James asked. Oh, he's fine. Liam, my brother-in-law, and I don't talk much because he works from home and stays in his room most of the time. But when I showed interest in his work, he explained it to me in detail. So, I've been getting along well with James' family. A few years later, I found out I was pregnant with James' child. Because of how bad my morning sickness was, I decided to quit my job. I think that's a good call. Don't overdo it, James agreed. Deciding to quit wasn't just my choice. I talked it over with James' family. Both James and Liam make enough money for us to live comfortably. I also have savings, and with my father-in-law working and my mother-in-law having a part-time job, quitting my job won't cause any issues. Wow, pregnant women have it easy. No work, no complaints, someone remarked. Lately, James has been complaining about me not working. But during our discussions about me quitting my job, James was actually the one who suggested it first. He said, "You're just freeloading without a job, acting all high and mighty." Who's acting high and mighty? I'm the one who always cleans up after you, I retorted. I've always been competitive, so I wanted to prove James wrong. If you had a problem, you should have spoken up during our discussions. You were the one who brought it up, right, James? Instead of complaining, focus on your own responsibilities. My parents-in-law agree with me and support my decision. James feels left out. He and Liam don't get along, so Liam never supports James. James looks down on me because I work from home. He doesn't listen to me and doesn't think I'm helpful. Liam whispered this, which is why he doesn't join our conversations. James doesn't like this, and when we're alone, he complains even more. Just because my family likes you doesn't mean you should act all high and mighty. I'm not acting that way. Everyone is just being reasonable. Even when it's just the two of us, I never used to lose arguments to James. But when the morning sickness started, I lost the energy to argue. Pregnancy isn't an illness. If you're not working, James thinks you're just lazy. I agree. Pregnancy isn't an illness, but Emily is putting in a lot of effort to nurture another life. That's hard work in itself, Liam acknowledged. Liam started helping out too. Whenever James complained to me, Liam would step in and tell his parents. While James got scolded by them, Liam took care of me. At this rate, it's hard to tell who the real father is, I joked, rubbing my belly. With my in-laws keeping an eye on things, I hoped James would eventually change. Until then, I kept trusting him. Oh, James isn't back yet? No, not yet. Suddenly, James started coming home late all the time. He claimed it was because of overtime, but I wasn't sure if that was true. Even on his days off, he'd say he was working late or got called in unexpectedly and wouldn't come home at all. I began to suspect James was cheating, and so did his parents. We tried to gather evidence together, but it was tough to catch him in the act. He always seemed to be at the office, and we couldn't find any evidence of him seeing another woman. Well, we can't really know what's going on inside the company, his parents said. I asked one of his coworkers, but she said everything seemed normal. Hey, Emily, take it easy, she told me. My morning sickness got so bad that I couldn't do any housework. But my father-in-law cooked, my mother-in-law helped with other chores, and Liam pitched in, so everything was okay. You should be ashamed of yourself. Lying around all day, not doing any housework, even though you're a homemaker? Why are you even here? James, who had seen his parents doing chores, woke me up one night just to say that. When I looked upset, Liam replied, "That's rich coming from someone who's not pulling his weight as a husband. Every time you challenge me, even though I'm the eldest. Well, you're not exactly the role model type of brother. You've always been a bit of a know-it-all," Liam retorted. The argument between the brothers escalated, almost turning physical, before their parents stepped in to stop them. After hearing what happened, their parents scolded James, saying, "That's enough. Do whatever you want." "Wait, James, where are you going without talking to me?" James left without a word. "I'm really sorry about that. We'd apologize," their parents said to me in place of James, and the situation calmed down. However, James's behavior has been worsening, and something needs to be done soon. I was at a loss for what to do. Is everything okay? One Saturday, my in-laws had planned a trip for a local event. Despite arranging it beforehand, they were worried about leaving me alone due to James's recent behavior. "I'm concerned about leaving you," my mother-in-law said. "I'll be fine. My morning sickness has eased up a lot," I assured them. They left with concern, and around the same time, Liam had overnight commitments. "I'm sorry for leaving at this time," Liam said. "It's okay, take care," I replied. Not long after they left, Liam also departed. James was unusually at home that day, still asleep. Despite not feeling my best, I decided to get up and do things around the house. I didn't want to risk James's criticism if I stayed idle. Thankfully, my father-in-law had prepared plenty of dishes and stored them in the fridge. I started cleaning and doing laundry, taking it easy on myself. "Hey, breakfast!" James finally woke up close to noon, still looking grumpy with messy hair. He demanded breakfast, and I rolled my eyes, grabbing some leftovers from the fridge. "What's that? Leftovers your dad made you? You can't even cook as a homemaker," James remarked. His comment annoyed me. Why does he say things like this? Doesn't he realize I'm pregnant with his child? There's no excuse for his behavior. Sorry, but right now, my main job is taking care of our baby. Household chores can wait. "How dare you talk to your husband like that?" James shouted at me, but then Liam barged in, breaking the tension. I could hear them arguing loudly outside. "You stay out of this." James snapped at Liam before storming off to his room, muttering angrily. As expected, James made a racket and then left the house. Liam let out a heavy sigh. "You okay?" Liam asked as he entered the room. "Yeah, what brings you here?" I replied. "I just came to pick up something I forgot," Liam explained, looking at me with concern. I chuckled, noticing how much he resembled his mother. "It's all right, go ahead. Don't worry about me," I assured him. "Okay then, I'll head out," Liam said, hesitating for a moment before leaving. I couldn't help but wonder, where did the James I first met go? At this rate, it seemed like divorce was inevitable. But I still wanted to remain close to my in-laws. Feeling suddenly drained, I decided to lie down. And before I knew it, I fell into a deep sleep. "Emily, time to wake up." James's voice interrupted my sleep. "Mim," I mumbled as I sat up. I met James's eyes, expecting him to scold me. However, he gave me a wry smile. "I'm sure I'll get an earful from James later," I thought. "I wanted to let you sleep, but it's already evening," James said in a surprisingly gentle tone. I was shocked by his kindness. "I've prepared dinner, so when you're ready, come join me," he added before leaving the room. I noticed a blanket over me and couldn't help but wonder if James had covered me. I went to the kitchen and found my father-in-law's dishes already warmed up, ready to eat. "I'm sorry, Emily," James said sincerely. "When I found out we were having a baby, I was thrilled, but then I got overwhelmed and took it out on you. This cake is my way of apologizing." James presented a cake to me. Honestly, this gesture couldn't erase all the past hurts, but his genuine apology warmed my heart. For now, I decided to forgive him and enjoy our meal together. "Look, it's snowing," James exclaimed excitedly. "Oh, you're right. Let's go see," I replied, following him to the window. The sight of the snow falling against the night sky was beautiful. Since I came from a place where it rarely snowed, this was a special moment for me. Without hesitation, I moved closer to the window. "Let's open it," James suggested. "But it'll be cold," I protested. "Just put on a jacket," he insisted as he draped one over me and opened the window, letting in the chilly wind. As I braced myself against the cold, James hugged me. Suddenly, I found myself outside, and when I turned around, I saw James grinning mischievously. "You're a homemaker who doesn't do the housework. That makes you a bad wife. Think about that tonight," he teased. "Excuse me? What are you saying? You can't even cook," I retorted. With that, James shut and locked the window. I rushed to the window, pleading with James to open it as I pounded on the glass, but he just grinned and closed the curtains. The cold was starting to make me shiver. My body, warm from the heater just moments ago, was rapidly losing its warmth. What am I going to do if this continues? Even my baby inside me, just as I felt like I might pass out from the cold and shock, someone reached out to me and asked if I was okay. They helped me into their car. "Why were you out here at this time of night?" It was Liam, who had come home earlier than planned because he was worried about James. The car's heater warmed me up, and I felt relieved. "We should go to the hospital, just to be safe," Liam suggested as he drove me there. Thanks to his quick action, both my baby and I were okay. While I was being examined, Liam arranged for a hotel where we could stay. He left to take care of something else. "I'm so relieved. You're going to be a strong baby, right?" Feeling reassured, I rubbed my belly. I was grateful that nothing serious had happened. Exhausted, I fell asleep as soon as I lay down on the bed. "Oh, Emily, are you feeling better now?" Liam asked as we left the hospital. "Yes, I'm completely fine now. Thank you so much," I replied gratefully. "No problem. Shall we head home?" Liam suggested. The next day, as we arrived home, I was shocked to see James freezing naked in the yard. Liam approached him with a cold gaze and tone. "This is what you said, right? If you can't cook properly, then freeze outside." James, shivering, couldn't even respond properly. "I'll call an ambulance out of kindness." "Emily, do you want to say anything to him before it arrives?" Liam asked me. Nodding, I stepped closer to James. "It's because of you that our baby was almost in danger. I will never forgive you. Just wait," I told him firmly. James was taken to the hospital. Later, I asked Liam what happened last night after he dropped me off at the hotel. Liam returned home alone and found James sleeping in the living room, naked with another woman who seemed to be his mistress. James had brought her home, thinking we wouldn't be there, and with me locked out, he seemed confident. Liam, furious, threw James out of the house in his birthday suit, telling him to think about his actions. Then Liam interrogated the shocked mistress, gathered evidence, and sent her back to her place. It turned out she had a family too. By the time Liam informed them of everything, dawn was approaching. He took a short nap in the car, and then came to pick me up. That's how everything unfolded. "I've talked to my parents. They said they're coming home today," Liam told me with a gentle smile, staying by my side until they returned. "It's going to be okay now, Liam." "Thank you so much," I said gratefully. "Nah, I just did what needed to be done. Thanks to him, I could feel safe at home," Liam replied. "I'm so sorry, that idiot. I can't apologize enough." James immediately apologized upon their return and faced their wrath. James was forced to pay child support, and it was decided that he would be kicked out. "I'm so sorry. It was just a mistake, Emily. I truly love only you," James pleaded, but I ignored him. I wish he'd stop treating me like a fool, I thought to myself. Suddenly, James became aggressive, raising his hand at me. "Enough is enough, my damn son." Liam intervened, grabbing and twisting James's arm. With the help of my father-in-law, James was easily overpowered, and I felt relieved. "I really just lost my mind for a moment, Emily," James said remorsefully as he was thrown out by the two men, while I was comforted by my mother-in-law. He was pathetic until the very end. I thought to myself. As for James, that's all I ever thought. By the way, Liam's pretty strong, isn't he? Considering what just happened and how he tossed a full-grown man outside, Emily remarked. Oh yeah, he used to do combat sports back in the day. I wouldn't recommend trying that move on just anyone though, Liam said with a smile. Emily felt a flutter in her heart at his smile, and her mother-in-law laughed upon noticing. With such good looks and strength, it's surprising he doesn't have a girlfriend, her mother-in-law teased. Liam bashfully looked away, which Emily found endearing. From then on, Emily decided to stay and be cared for in her in-laws' home since she had no other family or reliable person to turn to. If you'd allow, I'd love to hold your baby, her mother-in-law said. Of course, anytime, Emily replied. Right now, the four of us are eagerly awaiting the birth of my precious baby, Emily thought to herself. Talking to Liam, Emily found out that James the Fair was with a junior from his office. No wonder she wouldn't spill the beans when asked, Emily thought. The two of them were sneaking around and getting cozy at various spots. Once I reported it to the junior's husband, he did a thorough investigation. With that evidence, my divorce process went smoothly. Both of them got fired for fooling around during work hours and for claiming their dates as business expenses, Emily recounted. Thank you for all the help, Emily said to Liam. Well, it's only natural to want to help someone you love, right? Liam replied, his face turning beet red. Wait, what? Emily was surprised, and both of them blushed. Then Emily found out that Liam had feelings for her for a long time. I always thought I should hide these feelings, Liam confessed. I never imagined he felt that way about me, Emily thought. Honestly, I'm not ready to be in a relationship like that right now, Emily said. I understand, but if you can wait a bit, I want to explore these feelings, Liam said. Emily smiled, and Liam smiled back happily. I'm going to do everything I can to make you see how much I care, Liam declared. Okay, I'll be ready for that, Emily replied. Liam's parents overheard their conversation during dinner, which was really delicious. Looks like Liam has a girlfriend now, his mother teased. Liam blushed and responded playfully. Both his father and I laughed at that, Emily remembered. Afterwards, I gave birth to our lovely daughter right on time, Emily proudly shared. She's so cute. Congratulations. She looks just like Emily, adorable, Liam's parents said. I don't want to let her go, Liam said happily, embracing his role as a father. Years later, I happily married Liam again, and our daughter calls him Daddy. Liam adores her. Emily remembered fondly. I think our next child will be a boy, Liam guessed. Yeah, that would be cool if he's like me. But having a boy who looks like you would be awesome too, Liam added. I'm pregnant with our second child now. Our daughter is thrilled about becoming a big sister, Emily said happily. We're all thinking of names together. It seems like our daughter's suggestion might win, Emily laughed. I'm going to make Emily our daughter and the new baby happy, Liam promised. Don't forget about yourself in that promise, Emily said with a smile. We're planning to live happily ever after, all 6 of us together, having fun and getting along. That's our plan, Emily concluded. We can't wait to go out together as a family once the new baby arrives.